good afternoon. Welcome to this very special broadcast of the Race the Comrades Marathon Legends. My name is David O'Sullivan. Alongside me, I have Mosabudi Whitehead, and as you can see behind us, we are virtually outside the Moses Mabhida Stadium, where it's completely empty, unlike the scenes that we would have been experiencing had there been no coronavirus, had there not been a cancellation of the Comrades Marathon. But we know that around the country and around the world, people are virtually running the Comrades Marathon. We've been seeing some of the footage coming in. We've seen some of the times being posted. People running all sorts of different distances, whether 5, 10 kilometers, even 90 kilometers. For myself, well, I've covered the Comrades marathons 3 times, but my co-host, Mosabudi Whitehead, has not only covered the Comrades Marathon, he's run, is it 6 you've run altogether, Mosabudi?
Running and walking 6, yes.
What's your best time?
My best time is 10:54, but I'm probably most proud of my 11:57 when I understood the pain of chasing that final gun. Whew! Pain from start to finish, and I understood the comrade spirit.
You were also out looking at some of the runners earlier, but we'll come to that a little bit later. I do also want to bring in 2 of our other guests who are going to be with us throughout this broadcast. And a man I really feel needs no introduction. You know his pedigree so well. 9 wins. It is the great Bruce Fordyce. Bruce, good to see you. Good afternoon. So have you been for a run, Bruce? Okay, a little bit of a technical problem. Can't actually hear Bruce at the moment, but let's bring in another man who, a former athletes manager, and I can call him an encyclopedia of the Comrades Marathon, Kieran Walker, also joining us. Good afternoon, Kieran.
Hi, David. Hi, Mosibodi. Thanks for having me on the show today. It's an honor to be here. Would have preferred to be at the real Comrades, but this is the next best thing, so it's awesome to be here today.
I'm liking what I can see over your left shoulder. What are those? Are those medals?
Yeah, it's some medals and the Comrades route marker from the actual race. I took it after the event was finished.
Now we're going to try and get Bruce's audio. Let's see if we can hear you now. How are you doing there, Bruce?
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you perfectly. Thank you so much. Have you been for a run this morning yet, Bruce?
I have, David. I did the virtual 10K this morning in the company of my wife. Considerably slower than I used to run, but considering much more fun.
Had there not been a cancellation of the Comrades Marathon, was there any likelihood of you actually doing the race?
No, David. You know, I ran I think probably my last Comrades in 2012. And that was my 30th. And I can't think of a finer way to finish a Comrades career than to run the last kilometer and the last lap of Comrades with Zola Bud. And that will for me be as memorable as winning. And it was an extraordinary thing to finish with Zola. She was running her first, I was running my last, and I thought that was a good way to end a Comrades running career anyway.
It sounds like the perfect way to have done it. Let's bring in at this time the chairperson of the Comrades Marathon Association. We got Cheryl Wynn joining us. Hello there, Cheryl.
Good afternoon, David. Good afternoon, Mosabedi, and to my two good friends, Bruce and Kieran. Lovely to be with you this afternoon. Thank you for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. It is rather unusual to be in these circumstances. Do you have a tinge of sadness, or possibly more than just a tinge of sadness at the circumstances, Cheryl?
Well, yeah, no, obviously it was an incredibly sad decision, and we certainly anticipated that today was going to be an incredibly sad day. And then sort of 5.5 weeks ago, we came up with the idea of putting on this virtual race, and it has so by far exceeded our wildest dreams that it's really hard. Anybody that was out on the roads anywhere in South Africa today and saw and experienced the tremendous spirit that was out there. It's just impossible to be sad. Yes. No, of course, we would have loved to have staged the real race, the 2020 95th Comrades Marathon today. But, the way the runners came together and the way the race has been supported, it's just been phenomenal. We had 43,500 entries. We only had 27,500 entries for the real race. So you can see that there's just so much love and support out there. And, it really was a great day. It really was awesome. I was out on the route. I happened to live at the top of Fields Hill. So I got to run right along the route, and there were runners all the way, everyone sort of observing the social distancing. I didn't see any groups larger than 3 or 4 runners. Everybody had their masks, and everyone was so incredibly friendly, greeting one another. You often run along that road and, people will barely greet one another because they either have earphones in or whatever, and they're listening to music. But today, the spirit out there was just one of togetherness, and it was exactly what the Comrades Marathon is all about. And it really brought home just how much this race means to the people of South Africa, and certainly to the runners.
It seems to me, Cheryl, that you've got an additional problem for next year's race, because you're right, there were lots of runners out on the road, even up here in Gauteng, especially doing the 21 kilometer. I think you'll have a lot of runners saying to you next year, we want this virtual race, because even, shall we call it the real race, even if that goes ahead in 2021, there'll still be people who'll say, we want that comrade spirit in some of the shorter distances. Food for thought?
Yeah, I think, today might have been a bit of a game changer. I mean, we really, it was so beyond our expectations, the support that we got. And obviously, we're going to have a lot of debriefing sessions afterwards, but there's clearly a demand out there. There is obviously and always will be only one real Comrades 90-kilometer Comrades Marathon, but there's obviously a huge demand out there for something else, and we'll need to see how we can meet that demand, because we've been talking for years. How can we expand this race? How can we bring in younger people? Because the thing about Comrades Marathon, and I mean, Bruce just explained, I mean, he ran his 30th. It's almost impossible to do just one. Once you've had some sort of association with this event, you want to go on and on. And so we need to find a way to bring in younger people, and we'll be talking about it. And I have a funny feeling that this, although it was intended as a once-off, I don't think that's how it's going to turn out.
So you were out on the road a little earlier, and I think I would like to think most people do know that back in 1982, a young woman by the name of Cheryl Jorgensen won the Comrades Marathon. I hope people know that you are, in fact, a Comrades champion. How fresh are those memories of the win in '82, Cheryl?
It's actually something that, stays with you for the rest of your life. No one can ever take it away from you. I was, a one-win wonder. It was fantastic. I came twice second to the great Isabel Roche Kelly, and I came fourth on 2 occasions behind Lindsay Waite. So in between, I had my own win. No one can ever take that away from me. It was a wonderful experience. And, I remember Lindsay Waite used to often say that, Comrades Marathon changes the entire course of your life. And it certainly did for me, because, I mean, ever since then, I've been involved in athletics and very much like Bruce and Q. And it's, you just fall so in love with the sport, with the runners, that you just want to keep on giving back. And I've heard Bruce talk about his park runs and talk about how that's his legacy. And I mean, it's just something that happens. You just want to keep giving back to this sport that gives you so much.
Well, one thing about the Comrades Marathon is that it throws up so many legends. And if I could just for a moment pay tribute to some of the legends that we lost over the past year. And I think one of the most prominent was the man who wore number 1, Clive Crawley. And Kieran and Bruce come in at any stage here as we pay tribute to Clive Crawley. He was a remarkable man running with the number 1. What happens to that number now? Does it get retired? Cheryl?
Are you asking me, or?
Yep, Cheryl, what do we do with the number 1?
It's your number in perpetuity. You finished 10 Comrades Marathons, and you earned, Bruce did his the hard way with 3 wins. But, once you've earned that number in perpetuity, it's retired and it's yours forever. A few people have taken the decision to pass on their green numbers to very close family members. My husband, for instance, has passed his green number on to our son. But in general, it belongs to you, and you're the only one that can give it away.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else is going to run number one. Bruce, Kieran, have you got memories of Clive Crawley?
Yeah, I have a lovely memory of him in 1979 when I had finished third in the Comrades, and I came back to Pietermaritzburg for some reason. I can't remember what it was. And I bumped into him in the streets in Pietermaritzburg, and he took me by the shoulder and he said, "Listen, young Witsie," he said, "your third place was really, really good. Your second half was very fast. You realize you can win this race." And so for me as a youngster, I think it was my third Comrades. Even back in 79, I think Clive had probably done 20, I don't know, Comrades marathons. To hear that from him, for me, was very special from Comrades number one.
Kieran, any memories of Clive Crawley?
Yeah, growing up watching the race, I was always in awe of Clive Crawley having run so many Comrades marathons. I couldn't even believe it myself. And, just to show you how talented he was, I remember back in 1998, which coincidentally, Cheryl that year met me at the Comrades Expo through Barry Varty, who was a previous chairman himself, and asked me if I wanted to go on the press track the next day as an 11-year-old kid. And that was like a dream come true for me. So I was on the press track that day. And then I remember being on the finish gantry, after the winners and stuff had come through. And that was the day when Clive actually finished his 40th Comrades. And he still ran under 9 hours that day. And I was like, wow, this guy was so amazing to be finishing your 40th Comrades still under 9 hours, which is a really respectable time. Just shows, the legend that he was and forever will be.
Another person who passed away is Elizabeth Kavanagh, who goes down in history as the first official winner of the women's race in 75 after Letty van Zyl got disqualified. Kieran, do you know the circumstances why Letty van Zyl was disqualified in 75? All I can see is that she didn't meet a qualifying standard. I wouldn't know. Was there a qualifying race? Was she too young? What were the reasons? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head. 75, as you mentioned, was the first year that women were allowed to run the Comrades Marathon, but I can't recall the circumstances as to why she was disqualified. Maybe Bruce might know a bit about that.
Yeah, in fact, to be quite honest with you, Kieran, I'm not sure that we had to qualify back in those days. And when I say that, my first one was 2 years later in 1977. I don't remember having this qualification demon hanging over my shoulder. I, at the risk of exaggeration, would say I can vaguely remember that you could almost enter Comrades up until the last moment. For, I think in those days, a massive entry fee of about R5. I don't remember qualifying. There must have been some other reason that
I can come in here and help you out a little.
Cheryl, come on, help us.
I can help you out a little bit with what happened in 1975. Of course, it was the first year in which the Comrades Marathon was open to men and women of all races. But it also happened to coincide with the only year in which a limit was put on the number of entries by the local traffic authorities. And so it was restricted to 1,500 entries. It's probably the only time in history that the race was actually restricted to a number. And so it was done by a computer draw. And Elizabeth Kavanagh happened to be lucky in the computer draw. And so she was an official entrant, whereas poor old Letty van Zyl, who finished at least an hour ahead of Elizabeth Kavanagh, not to take anything away from Betty, because she was, a great winner. And I mean, at the end of the day, she's the one in the record books. But that's what happened, is that Letty van Zyl unfortunately ran the race unofficially because she missed the computer draw.
Oh, a computer draw. Okay, well, she still went on and got herself 3 titles in the following 3 years. The other people who we lost, one of the great characters of the Comrades Marathon, Tommy Malone. You must have endless stories, Cheryl, about Tommy Malone.
Tommy, we lost Tommy and Jackie Meckler. I mean, it's really sad to lose two of our, great champions, both in the past year. I mean, they were both very close friends of mine. I used to be involved with Transvaal Athletics, and Tommy Malone was the chairperson of the Transvaal, what was then called the Transvaal Convener Selectors. And I was also on the committee. We used to have all the meetings in Tommy's office, and he was a great character. He really was. Jackie Meckler was such a gentleman. In fact, both of them, they were absolutely gentlemen of the sport. Where that famous run of Tommy's, where he's more famous for coming second than he is for coming first, and maybe that was his one regret in life, is everybody forgets that he actually won the year before he had that trip right before the finish and was beaten by his own very good friend Moni Kuhn.
That's right. 66 is when he won it, and then was pipped at the post in 67. A very famous bit of footage there as well. I'm sure Jackie Meckler and Tommy Malone are people you knew well, Bruce.
Yes, both of them. So, I mean, it's just, I can't believe that the Comrades doesn't have those two great characters anymore. I mean, just Tommy alone, to listen to him talk, and particularly the repartee and the teasing and the banter that used to go between Tommy and Mani Kuhn, because the two of them beat each other in 2 consecutive Comrades marathons, and the two characters were so different. So Tommy was this extrovert, loud Scotsman. And it's an amazing thing about Scottish people. They can have left Scotland for 300 years. They never lose their accents.
Yes.
And then there was Mani, who was dour, reserved, quiet, humble Afrikaner. And the two of them were almost like twins. I miss them so dreadfully, because Tommy used to always tease Mani, and then Mani would try and reply. So just to give you an example, there would be a gathering where there'd be a whole lot of winners together, and Tommy would say,
"Oh, we would lose it, Bruce."
Winners baton across the finish line.
Sorry, Bruce, we lost you for a.
You see, he passed Tommy in the last stride.
Sorry, Bruce, you're going to start that story one more time, because we lost you at the critical moment. The last part of that story.
I will, but was that they always tease each other, and so
yes.
Tommy asked Mani to asked us to tell Mani what it was like to carry the winner's baton across the finish line. You heard that bit. and so Mani, because Mani passed Tommy on the last stride, he's one of the only a couple of winners who have never carried the winner's baton across the finish line. And I can promise you that to carry the winner's baton across the finish line is one of the most magical moments in sport anywhere. It doesn't matter how tired you are, how much you're cramping, how much pressure you've been under. That winner's baton is like a magic wand in your hand. It's like a lightsaber. And there isn't a single winner I can think of who hasn't raised it to the sky. As you get it, you pump the sky with it. And of course, Tommy would say to all of us, tell Mani, because Mani when Tommy collapsed across the finish line, they tore the baton out of his hand and they handed it to Mani. And so Mani's response always would be, because he wasn't as nimble as Tommy was with the teasing. His response would always be, shut up, Malone. And there was a time when a whole lot of us winners were driven to a function, actually, to launch I'm a Beady Beady at a venue somewhere around, I think it was around the top of Inchanga. And we were all traveling together in a combi. And as we went through Drummond, which is halfway, Tommy had been sitting at the back of the combi. He suddenly got up and he ran to the front of the combi. And we said, what are you doing? He said, no, I just want things to always be normal. And that is that, as usual, I went through halfway ahead of Mani Kuhn. Mani was still sitting at the back. And then Cheryl, sorry if I'm dominating the conversation here, but the memories are for me so fantastic. Cheryl was part of a group of people who organized a winners reunion in 1983. And every winner around the world attended. And it was a glorious, wonderful weekend. And no one could have a bigger ego than anybody else, because everybody there had won, but everybody there had been beaten by somebody else who was in the room. And because of the rivalry, and it was a black tie function at around about midnight. So you can imagine we had a couple of glasses of wine. At midnight, we staged a final rematch between the two, because of course you have to remember Tommy beat Marnie by 20 minutes in 1966, and Marnie beat Tommy by 1 second in 1967. So we had the rematch, the decider, and we decided to have that around the parking area of that hotel. And I was the starter, and Alan Robb was the judge at the finish line, and we mapped out a little 200-meter route, and it was a fantastic race. But unfortunately, Marnie didn't see the speed hump. So that was the end of the race. But so I miss them both, because it was just every year. And then again, please forgive me if I'm dominating, but I think Jackie Meckler has to be the most humble, most incredible winner of the race. I mean, he 5 times winner. A lot of people don't know that he would have been an 8 times winner, but he lost 3 times to English runners. He lost to Dave Bagshaw. I think he lost to Bernard Gomersall and to John Smith. And he was a simply superb runner. And he ran in the very, very famous Commonwealth Games race in Vancouver, where they ran in scalding temperatures, and all the officials abandoned them and went to the stadium in order to see the mile race of the century, which was Roger Bannister against John Landy, the only 2 men who'd ever beaten 4 minutes for the mile. And so they were left out there in the sweltering heat with no seconding and no water and everything. And in that particular race, Jim Peters collapsed in the finish straight. He had the gold medal in sight. He collapsed in the finish straight and crawled across what he thought was the line, but it was a couple of 100 meters to go. It is a horrific thing to watch. You cannot let children watch it, to see a man zigzagging across the track and trying to keep going. And in that incredible race, Jackie finished second. So he was also a silver medalist in the Commonwealth Games.
That's a fabulous story. That 1967 race is quite remarkable, and I think it is worth having a look at that final finish as Marnie Kuhn overtakes Tommy Malone right on the line.
Have a look at who's carrying the baton.
Early morning in Pietermaritzburg sees hundreds of runners at the start of the 56-mile Comrades Marathon. The headlights of a long convoy of spectator-carrying vehicles sparkle in the pearl grey light of pre-dawn. It mightn't be hot enough for that hat yet, but just wait till old man sun starts beating down. A young girl tries her luck. In this testing race, you need plenty of willpower to back up your stamina. 46-year-old Fanny Maria jogs along at a nice, even pace. But it's up the Maritzburg hills that the going really gets tough, and a man appreciates some refreshment. Number 62 is last year's winner, Tommy Malone. He's led for nearly half the race, and at this stage looks like making it 2 in a row. Malone hits the home stretch at Durban and heads for the tape. With mere yards to go, he falls. Staggering up, lunges desperately forward, but Marnie Kuhn takes first place. Among the first to sympathize with the gallant Malone is fine sportsman Marnie Kuhn. Congratulations to 2 great athletes for their fine effort.
It's absolutely amazing every time I watch it. Cheryl, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining us on this special broadcast, and we hope next time we're talking about Comrades Marathon in 2021, it'll be on race day itself.
Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
The chairperson of the Comrades Marathon Association, former champion Cheryl Wynne. We in the next few minutes we're going to get from Athletics South Africa, Alex Skosana. But I realise, Kieran, I haven't asked you for memories of Tommy Malone and Jackie Meckler. Share some thoughts there.
Yeah, I'm still quite young to have spent any time with both gentlemen. to have met them personally. But, as Bruce mentioned in all the stories, two remarkable individuals, very humble. And I will never forget that sprint finish that we saw just now on our screens. And I don't think there's ever been a closer sprint finish than that in the history of Comrades. Bar besides maybe the Nogalieva sisters crossing the line together, but that wasn't much of a sprint finish. And then obviously last year, Edward Mutibi just edging out Bongusa Mtembu by just over 30 seconds to take the win. But yeah, two remarkable gentlemen and forever in the history of Comrades.
Now we got an issue that Bruce raised, that there are two occasions where the winner hasn't carried the mayor's message. So it's obviously that occasion where Tommy Malone had the message and Moni Kuhn won. Is the other occasion when Charles Matthias was disqualified, Bruce?
Yes, so Charles was unfortunately disqualified for a doping problem. It's very controversial and there are many opinions about it. Happily, Charles did come back and win the 1997 Comrades. That was 1992, I think. And so Jetman Msutu was declared the winner a few weeks later of that particular race.
There's a little bit of Comrades Marathon trivia for you.
Yeah, some history, and definitely Jackie Meckler will be missed. He was still around at his races up here in Gauteng, a race named after him in the Pretoria area, and you'd often see him standing by that 25 kilometer as people get ready for Comrades, encouraging runners. Such was the humility of the former champion. We now hear from the president of Athletics South Africa, Alex Kosana, to talk to us a little bit about how and why this race is so important. Mhlonishwa, siyakubingelela, welcome, and thank you so much for talking to us. It took a long time for the announcement to be made that Comrades would eventually be cancelled. We first heard that it would be postponed when the national state of disaster was announced in early March. Such is the importance of the race on the South African calendar that the idea was to play it safe and wait and see. Why is Comrades so important to Athletics South Africa, to South African running in general?
Mingelele kuwe Mhlonipheki, and good afternoon to all the viewers all over the country, the continent and the world, wherever we are reaching the people. So I think you will understand that when COVID-19 was announced as a pandemic, as a global pandemic, everything changed from normal to abnormal, from certain to uncertainty. So it was very difficult from the side of Athletics South Africa to say, yes, this event will go ahead and this event will be postponed. And we had to play it by the ear and wait for the rules and regulations as they were being developed by the government of the Republic of South Africa, up to a point where we finally decided with Comrades that the race is not going to take place. And I'm happy that we did that, because today we are still under alert level number 3, where we cannot be able to host events of this magnitude. But we are also grateful that the virtual platform emanated, and we see many people, more than the actual number of the participants who were going to run the Comrades, the 27,500. I think we exceeded almost 40,000 virtual runners all over the world. And we are grateful about that. And it means that we will never be the same again as Comrades or sport or athletics. We have to accommodate all these people who have shown interest in participating in this event and other events of this magnitude.
That would be my next question then President, is that what then will be the plans? We've just heard from the chairperson of the Comrades Marathon Association, Cheryl Wynn, saying that they also were overwhelmed by the numbers of virtual runners, especially in the shorter distances. I'm sure you'll be looking to this for next year's race and future races. in involving younger runners. There was some talk, I remember, about younger athletes, development races in the weeks leading up to the Comrades Marathon. Will this be at the forefront of your mind going into the 2021 and further races to involve more younger participants, especially surrounding areas?
Well, remember that we used to have the youth run. It's only this year that we are not having the youth run. And the idea was to accommodate the younger aspirant runners and introduce them to understand the ultra distance running or marathon, as you call it. They came from all the corners of the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and they have grown from small number to thousands of them, supported by the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal, mainly the Department of Sports and Recreation. We are grateful to the MEC, current MEC, and the former MECs who embraced the idea. And going forward, it's a fact that Comrades will never be the same again. We should not do what we have been doing over the past 95 years or so. So we have to incorporate a number of things so that this race can truly be the ultimate human race for those who are doing 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 21 kilometers, 45 kilometers, and 90 kilometers. We have to go back to the drawing board and do things that will incorporate new ideas, create new traditions and cultures, and keep the old whilst we are moving. This is an eye-opener. If you look at the numbers, if you look at the villages, if you look at the towns and cities around the globe that embrace this race, it means we have to change our outlook. We have to plan differently, and we need to be accommodative. We need to have those who run the race, the 91 kilometers, and those who virtually run wherever they are because they could not be in the city of Durban or Pietermaritzburg, but they need to be accommodated and treated with respect like all other runners.
Mhlonishwa Siyabonga, thank you so much for talking to us. We look forward to next year's race, and we look forward to the continued support for the Comrades Marathon, and we look forward to more races sometime, maybe even small ones, before the end of 2020. I know the runners out there are hungry for even 10Ks or 5Ks, so we will wait to hear from your office. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much. We'll do that so long as it is safe. We put human life first before any other thing. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to Alex Skosana there. And one thing we are sure about, having heard from Cheryl Wynn as well, is that 2021 is going to be very different. In a few seconds, we're going to talk to Colin Hector from Championship because they have been involved in creating this virtual race. But Kieran, some thoughts from you about what Alex Skosana has been saying?
Yeah, I think, Alec mentioned some very good points. I myself, this morning, we took our son Ethan down to the Durban beach front, and he did his first Comrades 5 kilometer. And, it was really amazing just seeing the numbers of people that were down at the beachfront with their Bonitas Comrades race numbers on. And, little kids, people being pushed in prams. Ethan did about 4Ks in the pram and another 1K on foot. Took forever, but he did it and he's getting a medal. And I think, it adds another element to the amazing race that Comrades Marathon is. And I think that by including these virtual races, it's just not mom or dad that are getting to run Comrades, but the rest of the family that don't consider themselves maybe as runners, and just bringing that whole family together on a weekend. I think it's an amazing thing. And I think with this COVID-19 situation that the world is going through, everything is changing. We're learning a lot, and perhaps what was normal is not really supposed to be normal. So going forward, everything we do now is going to be the new normal, if that makes sense.
It does. Bruce, you've been so involved with the park runs, which have been a phenomenon all of their own. Do you think a Race the Legends, a virtual race as well, do you think for the Comrades that is something that should be encouraged going forward?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure it's going to be something that the CMA will think about and discuss. As Kieran said and as Alex said, I think it's going to make its way into the Comrades, into the whole Comrades basket, so to speak. But just, picking up on what we were saying about globally, I mean, this morning when I woke up, I was getting messages from friends in New Zealand who were busy finishing their runs. And then I picked up a message from a great friend, Sandy Kondo in Japan, who is running her own Comrades. I see now great friends of mine in Namibia, Kirsty Brits and all her friends have been running for 10 hours and 50 minutes. And they say they are going to break 12 hours for Comrades. It is just phenomenal today what has happened. Running out there today around my suburb, every second person on the road had a Comrades Bonitas number on. There's mine, by the way. I haven't taken it off yet. I've kept mine on track. You'll notice it's not the common or garden ordinary white one. It's a green number for somebody who's done more than 10. And that's why I haven't taken it off. And today was completely mind-boggling. And cars driving past us and hooting.
Yes.
And to the two youngsters I bumped into on the road, I was running at the correct distance with my wife, and these two youngsters said, is this the Comrades Marathon? What's happening? And I looked at them and I said, yes. And the two of us have done 65 kilometers. And their eyes were like this. They were completely in awe of us. I lied. We had done 8 kilometers, but I just wanted them to think that all over the country people were running Comrades and how special it was. To my son and my nephew, my son Jonathan, my nephew Mikey ran around Richmond Park in London today. My son Nicholas ran around Ceres in thick snow today. It has been an incredibly special day. It's not quite over because the true heroes, the ones doing the 90s, are struggling in. But it has been a really, really special day. And so at the risk of, sounding cliched, out of every dark cloud does come a silver lining. And today has been a silver lining out of a dark cloud, which has been that there hasn't been a 2020 Comrades. And we should all be in that magnificent stadium, Moses Mabhida, getting ready for the drama of the final cutoff gun. But this has been a magnificent compensation.
Well, we're going to show video that Mosabudi took a little bit earlier today as he was coming through to the studio. I also saw the guys with their Bonitas numbers as I was driving through to our studio. But in fact, let's have a look at that video. So Mosabudi set the scene for us. You went out with you filmed on your phone.
Yeah, so I got up this morning, and before I came in, I decided to take a drive around the eastern, southern and western corners of Johannesburg. And I just saw runners everywhere. And that was from about 7 o'clock in the morning. I had pre-arranged with some runners who said, I'm going for my 45 and sub 3 or whatever. And I just went and got amazing encouragement from their families. They were being seconded by their families and they were having so much fun. And some were just being helped by community members in Soweto. And that was the spirit of Comrades around the country. It was wonderful to see.
I'm doing 21, my first Comrades. I'm happy.
90 Ks this morning. We're doing 90 Ks, but we're doing running and cycling.
We're running 20 and get on the bikes and go and do the rest of the 90 on the bike.
You guys are clearly missing Comrades, aren't you?
Yep.
Definitely.
We'll see you next year.
The greatest race, eh?
We're doing a Comrades virtual run. I'm doing 45 kilometers. It was a tough one, I can say. We ran, so far I think we ran about 40 kilometers. My wife is supporting me. Now I'm going back to the house. I have to just put together another 4 kilometers in my house.
Sure.
And I'm done. And I'll enjoy my weekend, eh?
How many kilos, gents? 28. 28. Lovely. Are we doing the virtual run? I'm enjoying how many kilos today in honor of Comrades? How many kilometers are we doing?
Oh, it's lovely, man.
Enjoy! How many kilometers are you doing?
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
How many
Thank
kilometers?
You. I'm doing 90, but I'm on 30.
You're on 30?
Yeah.
You're doing 90?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. How many kilos, my brother?
37.
57?
Yeah.
Randall, that's you?
Yeah, it's me.
Finished.
Yes.
The crepes are starting?
Yeah.
And another 7 Ks to go.
You make it. You're almost there. You're almost there.
I'm almost there. Go! Let's go!
You say this year you would have been doing a double green?
A double green today.
Hey, man. So now you have to wait for 2021.
I have to wait for 2021.
Ah, man.
Hey, man, I was so looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was interrupting that bloke right at the end there. I saw he had a green number.
Yeah, he was going to run his 20th Comrades today. He would have run his earned his double green number. So he was a bittersweet moment for him, saying he'll be back next year in 2021 to earn that 20th Comrades medal.
So Bruce, where in Johannesburg can you replicate poly shorts?
Can you find a poly shorts, did you say, Dave?
Yeah, where do you replicate poly shorts? Because it's all very well to say I'm running the 90, but if you're not running poly shorts, does it really count?
No, it doesn't count, because the problem with poly shorts, and remember, the runners would not have run poly shorts this year. They would have run down poly shorts in the early morning cool with a bit of frost at the bottom. But the real poly shorts is 1.8 kilometers long, and unfortunately, you get to it after you've run 80. So it's very difficult to explain to people who don't run what you feel like after 80. But you are completely broken. And if you're very fortunate, you've only lost 3 toenails and now you've got to go up this monster. I suppose, I've run up Jan Smuts Avenue quite a lot. That's probably 1 kilometer. But wow, in Johannesburg, it's tough to find something as hard and as steep as poly shorts. The advantage we have up here in Johannesburg, of course, is we have high altitude, which means that we have a 13% higher red blood cell count than our coastal, friends. So we have a bit of an advantage there. But poly shorts, that's waiting for everybody in 2022.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to bring in now from Championship Colin Hector, because he's been instrumental in getting this virtual race up and running, I think is the appropriate expression there. Colin joining us, I hope. Let's get him in. There he is. Hey, Colin, good to see you. Good afternoon. Tell us about this concept of the Race the Legends. How did it come about? What's the thinking behind it all?
Well, I think it was all initiated by the state that the whole world finds itself in with this COVID-19 pandemic, and the way it really shut down everything, not just our sport of road running, but every sport around the world has come to an end. And as a business that operates in that industry, we actually found ourselves in a position where we had to put our thinking caps on and come up with ideas or solutions that could look at things differently. So with our partners from Denmark, Morten Toft, who I've worked with many years, he came up with an idea of Race the Legends across a standard marathon, and taking some of the great marathon legends over the years and seeing how we could create an event of that nature. Because although virtual races have been around for some time and in different formats, we actually felt that, you need to give somebody a real reason to engage and something to engage with. And in thinking through those ideas, it was very clear that, there's no greater story in road running than the Comrades Marathon. And it really fits the whole scenario of the situation the world finds itself in. It's in a crisis situation. And anybody that's ever run Comrades knows that when you're going through tough times, it's people standing together and helping you through that gets you to the end. And all we've been seeing on the news for many months is all the negatives and the problems going on. And we felt that not just Comrades runners, but the world out there needs to engage the Comrade spirit. So the race wasn't so much about the concept wasn't about trying to replicate the race on Comrades Day, because that's something that is so special. I don't think we can ever replace that. But it was to take that spirit that happens on Comrades Day and expose the rest of the world to it, to create a very positive environment.
Tell us about how difficult or easy, I'm not sure which way it would work, to set up the program, get the technology in place. What was that like?
Well, to a certain degree, that is our core business. We've been timing events like Comrades Marathon. I think this would have been our 26th year that we've timed the Comrades. And over the years, technology has developed in leaps and bounds. So a lot of things are possible. Just like we are having these discussions remotely at the moment, wouldn't have been possible, 20 years ago. So a lot of the technology today makes it a lot easier, but needless to say, there's a lot of challenges. The take up and response to this has been tremendous. So with close on 40,000 or just over 43,000, I think the number is, managing all those results and process on the day are quite challenging. But we've got a team of very clever people sitting in the background and ensuring that it works so everybody can enjoy the experience.
You've touched on the numbers, Colin. 43,000, that's a lot of people. But what's the breakdown? Because we're used to a flood of entries for 87 kilometers. And of course, with shorter distances being available for the virtual run, we've seen a lot more people entering the virtual run to Race the Legends. What's the breakdown from 5, 10, 21? What have you seen?
Yeah, more than half the people, the large majority, are are on the shorter distance, 21K, 10K, and 5K. The 21 and 10K are the larger numbers. I don't have the figures in front of me at the moment. But the shorter distance has been attractive to people that are not typical runners. A good example is my wife is not a person who goes out running ever. But just in the spirit of Comrades, she decided to enter, and she entered the 5Ks. And, she did that and is very proud of it. So that distance was really introduced to accommodate the non-runner that would like to engage in the experience as well.
Tell us about
Sorry,
Colin, just the leaderboards. They're quite novel. Just tell us about that. We're going to show our viewers an example of the leaderboard. Just take us through it.
Great. The leaderboard is typically what we would have at most events like a traditional Comrades Marathon. The one major difference here is that number one on the leaderboard now won't necessarily be number one on the leaderboard later on, because this event is taking a place all around the world and different people are loading up their times as they actually finish. So needless to say, somebody faster will come along at a later stage. But we've taken it one step further than what we would normally have on a leaderboard, in that people can find their results there. And by clicking on it and going down further, we now start experiencing the Race the Legends concept, where people can, for example, go back to 1921 and see the time that they ran today, how that would have ranked them and put them in the race if they were running back in 1921. Now, fair enough, it's not a perfect science because there's a lot of different factors that come into the situation. Weather conditions, we all know the roads were very different in those days. Shoes were very different. But it's a novel way of people to engage and experience the event. For the typical non-Comrades runner, there's also the possibility that we can actually, from a 10K time, do an estimation of what they could expect on that pace to be able to go and run the Comrades in. Obviously, we're not saying that will be their Comrades time. The better they train, as Bruce will tell you, the better your time will be at the end of the day.
Yeah, but to see how well I would be doing against Bruce Ford. I remember Bruce once telling me, put the treadmill on, I forget how many kilometers an hour you told me, Bruce, and I lasted all of 10 seconds, where you were lasting hours after hours. It really humbled me about how fast I needed to run. Colin, just one last thing about the charities. I presume that the charities of the Comrades can benefit from the day in some way?
Very much so. The whole concept is not about making money. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people devastated by the impact of the COVID pandemic. And, many people are unemployed. Many charities that relied on income have actually, that income has just dried up because companies that maybe supported them, they have to scale back. They have to look at how they spend their money because they just don't have the revenues. And Comrades traditionally has a Bidi Bidi charity portfolio, which is made up of 6 charities, which change from time to time. But they typically generate substantial donations from the public to actually support those charities. So that same model has been applied to the virtual race. The one difference is that traditionally runners and Comrades would choose to pick a charity. Yeah, we've actually created a charity profile for every one of those 43,000+ people. And anybody can go to the start list, and there's a little icon on there that you click on it for the charity, and you can make a donation against that runner. So, for example, Bruce ran today. Somebody can go and search for Bruce's name, click on that icon, make a donation, or Kieran's son, I think he also entered, didn't he, Kieran? You can actually go and select his name, make a donation in his name that goes to any one of those charities. So we do appeal to the broader public out there who maybe didn't participate to actually still support the initiative, because those charities are all selected for the tremendous work that they do, but it is very tough times for everybody. And people sometimes forget about how some of those charities, the resources they relied on in the past, have literally just evaporated overnight.
Fantastic. Colin, just one last thing. When does the virtual race end? Because obviously the Americans they've still got daytime, haven't they?
Exactly. So it is intended as a global event. Yes, the majority of participants are from South Africa, but approximately 5,000 of them are from around the world. The New Zealanders are finished already. That the approach is that anywhere on the 14th of June in your time zone, you've got to actually participate in this event. So I think Hawaii, if I got my geography correct, will be the last area where people can actually still officially do a Comrades. But it does highlight a key point, is that this isn't a traditional race. And I actually personally don't even like to call it a race. It's really a public engagement experience. And nobody's going to be disqualified if maybe, you ran an hour into the 15th of June. Those are not really issues that actually impact people. It will take some people, because it's a new concept. People are figuring out exactly how this works. Some people might battle to figure out how to upload their times. They can get help and support from the internet or from the race office. But there's no hard and fast rules to block people out of it. We actually want people to be engaged and to enjoy the experience at the end of the day.
Well done, Colin, and to you guys at Championship. It's been a fabulous success. And thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Colin Hector there. And now let's remind you of what happened at Comrades Marathon in 2019. And we'll bring Kieran Walker, Bruce Fordyce, Mosabudi Whitehead to talk a little bit more about the winners in the men's and the women's races from 2019.
Carpet, you can look at it, it's thick, it's going into thick grass. It feels very hard to just lift your feet walking on it. But Edward Mutibi seems to have no problem negotiating it as he wins Comrades 2019.
Yeah, and he's done it with the unofficial time of 5:31 as well. What a race run for Edward Mutibi.
Just nip under that. It doesn't really matter because that was all done on a down run anyway, as Gerda Steyn becomes the first woman ever to run a Comrades up run in under 6 hours. She's going to have the 4th fastest of all time. She is the champion, but more than that, she has broken not only Elena Nurgalieva's up run record, she has broken so many records. 2 Oceans and Comrades in the same year. We last saw that in 2015, but she has taken the record and become the first woman ever to run under 6 hours on the Comrades up run.
So I think it was Gerda Steyn who took that one. That was all the headlines, weren't they, Mosabudi? You reported on that one.
Yeah, an absolutely smashing run. I was at the 60-kilometer mark, and as she just jogged past, she had the most wonderful smile on her face. She enjoyed the race so thoroughly and never looked in any trouble whatsoever. She was always going to win the race. And I remember speaking to her the year before, after she had ran so well at 2 Oceans, and put it to her that you are starting to look like Frith van der Merwe in the late 80s when she went back to back with Two Oceans and Comrades in the same year. And she just laughed it off, but said Comrades remains her main focus every year, as well as she's done at Two Oceans, and she hopes that she can eventually win it. What a smashing win it was. What a smashing win it was.
Yeah, at 5:58. Kieran, your thoughts on 2019? Gerda and Edward Matibi's performances?
Yeah, it was an amazing race. History was made with Gerda running that sub 6 hour. I remember going back to Easter weekend last year in Cape Town after Gerda had won Two Oceans, and we were sitting at dinner with her coach, Nick Bester, himself a former Comrades Marathon winner, doing amazing things with his athletes. And we worked out that the pace that she had run at Two Oceans, if she had just run a little bit slower, but obviously taking it through to Comrades, that should run under 6 hours. And they kind of laughed it off, but I was like, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a sub 6 hour Comrades. And then I remember commentating on the SABC broadcast last year, and with about 10 Ks to go, not to forget the climbing up Polly Shorts, I think Gerda had to run something like 42 minutes or so for that last 10 Ks to break 6 hours. And I called it at that time saying, I really think we're going to see a sub 6 hour performance on the day. And yeah, it was amazing. And then going back to the men's race, Edward Matibi running his second Comrades ever, finishing 4th the year before on the down run. It was some nerve-wracking moments. Bongmusa Ntembu obviously was leading the race, going up Polly Shorts. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, as Bruce knows, there's a myth that the first man that always makes it to the top of Polly Shorts never loses the Comrades Marathon. And Edward passed Bongmusa going up Polly Shorts, got to the top of the crest in first place. But it wasn't all over until the finish. It was some nail-biting moments there as Bongmusa slowly closed the gap, but just ran out of real estate, finishing around 30 seconds behind Edward. But phenomenal win by both Edward and Gerda. And, as Bruce was mentioning earlier about Tommy and Mani being such humble people and champions, the same can be said with Edward Matibi and Gerda Steyn. Amazing, humble people. Just brilliant performances all around.
Bruce, let's hear your thoughts, particularly on that Polly Shorts tussle that we saw in the men's race last year.
Well, David, I was actually standing on Little Polly's. That's Ashburton, or as it used to be called, Impushini, which is 11 Ks to go. And that, to me, is the critical part of the Up Comrades. It's a horrible, horrible part of the Comrades Marathon. You run up this hill, it has a little bit of a break in it, and then you have to climb again, and it gives you a grim warning about what Polly Shorts is going to be like. And so for both the leaders, the men's and the ladies, it was fascinating for me to look at it, and I saw Bongmusa and Edward running shoulder to shoulder on Little Polly's, and I thought, well, here we go. We've got a race here. And as Kieran said, it's a tiny piece of Comrades trivia. It will change one day, but so far the man and the woman who have, and notice how I cunningly use mountaineering terminology here just to emphasize the steepness of Polly Shorts. The man and the woman who have summited Polly Shorts first have never been caught. But as Kieran said, Bongmusa was leading going up Polly Shorts. Edward passed him, but only, by a short distance. And so the Comrades trivia was tested again. In the end, it has stood firm because Edward won, but what a close finish. And then what can you say about Gerda? You can run out of superlatives. She came past me on Little Polly's. She saw me standing at the side of the road. She gave me a cheeky little impish smile and a wave. And I thought, my goodness, this is history in the making beyond all belief. And it was a great privilege to be at the finish, standing in the VIP. So there's a VIP section, you see, Dave, and the VIP section is full of the important people, the officials and the sponsors, and of course the politicians, and then the ex-winners. And so we ex-winners stand there together and have a wonderful time. We get spoiled rotten. It is a complete ego trip for us. But I happen to be standing next to Derek Price, who was one of my heroes, and Derek won 2 up runs in a row in 1974-75. There were 2 up runs in a row because 75 was the 50th running of the Comrades Marathon. And Derek won that in 5:58, that particular race. And I remember him saying to me, Bruce, 5:58, and have a look, Gerda Steyn is coming in 5:58. And he said to me, honestly and humbly, he said, if you had told me in 1975 that a woman would be running on my shoulder, I would have told you, you are completely insane and you're taking drugs or something. And he said, and here's the disturbing thing. He said, when I finished in 1975, I was finished. I was completely out. I was exhausted. He said, have a look at Gerda. She is waltzing down the finish straight. She's blowing kisses at her family and her fans, and she looks good for another 5 kilometers. So he says, I have no doubt in my mind that had Gerda and I been together with 1 kilometer to go in 1975, said, I have no doubt who would have won the sprint finish. And I think, to put it into perspective, when I started running, to break 6 hours on an uprun as a man, you would probably win the race, but you would definitely make the first 3. And now Gerda has rewritten the whole timing, our thinking about the race, everything to do with it. And so I think Gerda and Frith have to be now the 2 greatest female runners, even though Elena Nugalieva has won 8 Comrades. It's just those 2 magnificent runs of theirs. I think the only thing that Gerda is short of is another win. And Edward also, yes, another win. And I'm going to sound like I'm lecturing here, but a truly great champion wins in both directions.
Well, let's go to 1975 as you raised it with Derek Price winning that race. Here's some footage of that event.
The 1975 Comrades was the 50th running of the race since its inception in 1921. Many innovations were introduced this year. For the first time, the event was open to runners of all race groups and to women competitors. Qualifying standards were set, and the field was restricted to 1,500 runners, which did not meet with favourable comment. For the second time in its history, it was a successive uprun to mark the Golden Jubilee. The last back-to-back upruns were in 1940 and 1946, straddling the war years when no marathons were run. Alan Robb, who had won the Harley Ballington Trophy for the first novice home in 1974, led the 1,352 official starters until Harrison Flats, where 74 winner Derek Price effortlessly took over the lead. Robb slipped back to 5th place behind Gordon Shaw, Koos Sutherland and John McBrearty. Price won in a time of 5 hours and 53 minutes, and in the year of the woman, Elizabeth Kavanagh was the first woman to win a Comrades medal, even though an unofficial entrant, Letty van Zyl, was the first lady home. Vincent Rakabele, who finished 20th, was the first black runner to win a silver medal.
So that winning time by Derek Price back in 1975, replicated almost exactly by the women, Gerda Steyn winning the women's race last year. Now let's have a look back at the last decade or the past decade of women champions. And Elena Nugalieva is the dominant name there, Bruce.
Yes, what a fantastic champion. And, you know, people sometimes say to me, Bruce, no one will ever win 9 like you did. But I said, well, Elena came very, very close. And if it hadn't been for her twin sister, Oliesa, she might have won more than me. And also, she had a bunch of 2nd and 3rd places. So that is the standout champion, the women's champion of the Comrades Marathon. But what I've really, really enjoyed about the last 6 or 7 years of the Comrades Marathon, and without disparaging the male gender too much, the women's race at Comrades has just brightened up. It's been fantastic. Ever since Ellie Greenwood, I think 2014, Ellie Greenwood broke the Nugalieva twins' stranglehold on the race. Ellie from Canada. And thereafter, every single women's champion has been charming, beautiful, wonderful, eloquent, bright, a fabulous Comrades winner. Straight after Ellie, Caroline Warsman, what a fabulous winner. And I can say that she's a fellow Bitsy like me, so well done, Caroline. Shanae, thoroughly deserved winner. Camille Heron winning the uprun, 2015 or 2017, 2017. Camille, a California girl, just a wonderful, wonderful character. I always say she runs like a praying mantis. She's got this elongated running style. You can't really work it out, but she's a fantastic winner. And then Anne Ashworth winning, also fantastic, clinical, brilliant run. And then Gerda, what can you say about it? So it's, for me, of the last few years, the really exciting thing has been the progress of the women's race and how exciting it's become. And I absolutely love following the progress of those women.
Kieran, talk to us about the Nugarieva twins. As Bruce mentioned, the dominance in that period of the early, around 2010. You worked at Mr. Price with the athletes. What made them so good in South African conditions, and they were so loved here every time they came to Comrades? What was behind their dominance?
Yeah, the Nugarieva twins, I could actually say that, they follow a similar pattern to Steyn himself. Alessia, the one sister, she has a 2:27 marathon, which is the same PB as Gerda's time. And then her sister Elena, the 2:29 marathon PB. So they were very dominant in the race. And I think that's, as Bruce would also say, the faster you are at the marathon distance,
just a few meters back, it was a wonderful feeling for these two twins that have worked their way into the hearts of South African sports and road running fans over the years.
Was as if it was a job for them. And we've seen in the South African women's running now, how the women are starting to run much quicker marathons, like Anne Ashworth, the 2:35 marathon, a brilliant 6:10 Comrades finishing time when she won the down run on a very long course. And then that is
not a pressure at all. But over 6 hours, one of the slower Comrades winning times, the woman in
the easiest
but I don't think
for
they're
them
too worried about
to
that.
dominate
Elena Nugarieva, the finishing straight, her time was just around about 6 hours 13. Took her 5th victory, and her sister second.
Apologies about Kieran's audio just breaking up slightly there, but I think we got a fair amount of information there from him about the Nugalievas and their incredible performance. Let's have a look at the multiple winners in the women's race at the Comrades Marathon, and no surprise that we've got Elena Nugalieva there with her 8, Maureen Holland, and there's a name I think Kieran, Bruce, we don't hear much about, but a woman who ran 4, I think possibly because it was in the 60s and the 70s, and then when we had the Comrades Marathon on television from what was it, 1982, was it 83 the first time in its longevity, in its entirety, that we got the people like Maria Buck, Frith van der Merwe, Helen Lucre becoming dominant names. Letty van Sail being the first winner, but then disqualified. We've spoken about her. Geraldine Watson winning in the 30s as well, unofficially. But Maria Buck, Frith van der Merwe. Let's go with Frith van der Merwe here, Bruce, because obviously that's your era, and we have spoken about her wonderful achievement. Talk to us about Frith and what she was able to achieve.
Well, I'm delighted to say I watched Frith transform, a little bit like the caterpillar into the butterfly, from being a really social runner at Wits University. I remember running cross-country league races in April and May, and Frith used to come along and run the ladies' race for Wits University, and then she would join us afterwards when we went to the student pub for a few drinks. And she was really a social runner. And then somewhere along the line, like I suppose so many of us, she must have decided to see what happens if I train hard and I make a little bit of a commitment. And she really burst on the scene. And again, I think it's a crime that Frith only has 3 wins. She should have won many more, but for a variety of reasons she didn't. If you had to say to me, what is the greatest run, what are some of the greatest runs you've ever seen? And I see we're watching it. I would say Frith van der Merwe's 1989 down run, where she finished 15th overall, has got to be one of the greatest ever Comrades marathon runs. I mean, look at her. She looks fantastic. She looks fresh, strong, full of running. She's got a smile on her face. And that was just completely superb. 5 hours 54. As I said earlier, when I started running, if you broke 6 hours, you had a really good chance of saying I could have, as a male, that you would win the race. And here's a 5:54 from this impish, pretty young girl from Wits University running for Benoni Harriers then. And I can say, have I got a minute here just to tell a story, David? Because my mate, Stuart Peacock, finished 13th that day. And it was his best run ever. He finished 13th. So it was a bittersweet run for him, because 13th is a magnificent position, but it's 3 positions away from getting a gold medal. So it was a bittersweet finish. But he said, as he finished at Kingsmead Cricket Stadium, he said the crowd erupted. There was just this roar all around him, and the noise was stupendous. And he said this was incredible. So he started blowing kisses and air punching and waving at people and just celebrating his 13th position. And he said as he ran the last lap, he thought, this is completely amazing. It's breathtaking. It's goosebump material. What must it be like to win? I mean, I'm finishing 13th. And he said he crossed the line and he turned around to face the crowd after he crossed the line to give one last air punch, to say, I've done it. And he said as he did that, he saw Frith van der Merwe coming around the corner and heading down the finish straight. So he said, I defined the meaning of the word leopard crawl. He said, that's how I got out of there, so that no one would focus on me anymore. That's how fantastic her run was. And Frith is, one of the truly great legends of the Comrades Marathon.
Yeah, she really is a legend, David. And because she was from the Benoni kind of area, she'd often be around at races. I remember seeing her maybe 4 or 5 years ago at the Alan Robb 32 kilometer out in Germiston. And spoke to her a little bit about that. And of course, I asked her about that wonderful down run. And she said on the night before, she just felt a wonderful sense of calm. And she did something she usually never does. Mm-hmm. She had half a glass of wine before a race. But she was just feeling so good, and she knew that she'd have a great run. And she says just from start to finish, it was a magical day for her out on the road. And the time, as we heard, was obvious that she would run that fabulous time.
I love that story, that she knew it the night before she was going to have a great run. Bruce, do you feel it in your bones the night before?
David, I would never be that arrogant as to say that you feel you're going to win. But I certainly started a couple of Comrades marathons knowing that I would run 5.5 hours. My training had told me that. The way I felt, I get all the answers from certain key training sessions that I would do in the last couple of weeks before the race. So I knew that I would run 5.5 hours. So therefore I would say, okay, if somebody runs faster than that, then they will beat me. But I certainly know tomorrow morning I'm not going to let myself down. And it's a pity we don't have Cheryl here to continue to talk to her, because she shared with me the other day, we did I don't know what they call them nowadays, a webinar, a blog or something. I'm far too old to know what's going on with these things, technology. But she shared a moment where she said before 1982, she knew she was going to win. The day before, she knew she was going to win. And I've certainly gone to the start line knowing I can't say I'm going to win, but if you're going to beat me, you're going to have to lose an arm and a leg out here, mate, because I'm going to leave nothing out on the road. I'm going to run as hard as I can. So we certainly have that. And the converse of that is that sometimes when you're not going to win. Yeah, and the difference between the winner quite often is that they're pretty sure they are going to win. The contender is hoping to win. And when I was beaten by my good mate Nick Bester, we were great friends. I kind of knew that day, even though I lined up, I had a really haunting feeling that I'm not going to win this one. And I couldn't have handed on the baton to a better mate and a really great Comrades runner than Nick Bester.
Right. We're going to move on to having a chat now. I'm going to hand the reins over to Mosabudi Whitehead as we bring in Max Team Running Team Manager Martin Ngwenya joining our broadcast.
Good afternoon, Martin, and we've got Kieran Walker here, and I'm sure you will have a lot to say to him. I know how close the two of you are, have been over the last decade or so, but I mean, just talk to us about Max Elite. When people in my generation, sort of their late 30s, maybe early 40s, mid 30s, started watching Comrades, that Mr. Price was what we saw. It was really at the forefront of the race towards the late 90s, and it's something that, as Max Elite, you must be quite happy with, quite proud of the fact that this Comrades Marathon has become synonymous with Mr. Price and Max Elite.
Good evening, everyone. Mosibudi and David there in the studio, and the viewers, and my fellow colleague Kieran Walker there, and Bruce. And let me take this opportunity and send my condolences first to the Clive Crowley's family, and Clive was one of the greatest Comrades runner. And let me just send condolences especially to his wife, Trish Crowley, who's also always there to assist the athlete. Yeah, talking about the next team. So as you remember, like you said, that in the 90s he used to be one of the best team to win all the races and track, especially in track and field. We used to specialize that in the track and field, like in the APSA series, Yellow Pages, and all of that. But came 1995, where Sean Micklejohn win the first gold for the Mr. Price team. That's where we dominated from there. Since then, we have been dominating in the top 10, both in the ladies and the men's team, up until we changed the team to Max Elite. We are also dominating. So I would say Comrades has been part of our family. Now, we've been, and even myself, I worked for Comrades for 12 years. So I've been part of this wonderful event for quite a while now. And with the help of Kieran Walker also. As you know, he's been called the encyclopedia because he knows everything. I've learned from him lots of things from Kieran. We've been working together for more than a decade now. So yes, what I saw today, it was a fantastic thing to see South Africans supporting each other like it was a race, a Comrades race itself. Because I was up and I wake up early in the morning today, around about 3, to second one of my athletes to help them in on the road. Because some of the guys were doing 90, which Ghost Corner also did the 90 kilometers, and other guys they were doing 45 kilometers, and all the events like the 21K. Some of them they did the 21K. So it was a great day for me today, and I also, even us as a club, we were very happy to be involved with the Comrades Marathon Association, as one of course, as now you know that we are a technical sponsor for the Comrades Marathon also. So it is a great, give us a great pleasure again to be part and parcel of Comrades Marathon. Comrades Marathon, yes.
Martin, you mentioned Nkosikona Mhlakwana as running. He was running the 90 kilometers of the virtual race today, race the Comrades Legends, and he posted his time. Kieran and I were just talking about it a little bit earlier. That what's it, 5:55 clocking. How do you look at the race? I mean, this year it must be bittersweet because you would have been hoping for another gold medal on top of the podium, but how do you reflect on the virtual run, especially given the fact that Mr. Price is the technical sponsor in Max Elite?
To be honest, Musibiti, as we reached the 60 kilometer mark, and Koskona was starting to crumble and cramping and all of that, I was like, yo, can you imagine if it was an actual race now? And this guy is doing this at the 60 kilometers mark. Then 60 kilometers still got a long way to go, but he was keep on going, and that's it took me back to 2019 race where he was having the same problems, cramping and all of that, but he keep on going up until he get the position 11. So I think for him it was a good thing, and give us even now I'm still getting good bumps. Sorry about that.
We got you back.
Sorry guys, I'm sorry about that. Even now I'm still getting a good bumps for thinking about that what happens today. Seeing the guys like Porcal Kumalo helping him, pushing him, and the surprising thing that I saw on the route at the bottom, top of Bottas Hill, as we are coming down from the what you call the school, Kisney School, there were quite a few people that were waiting there. And as I was stopping the car to take up some supplements and everything, there were people that were asking me, "Is Goskona leading?" And I was like, "He's leading. How come you say he's leading? There isn't an actual race." But it gave me a hope that and happiness actually to see people that they still want to watch Comrades, and they still told themselves that on this day, on the 14th, we'll be out there looking out for our heroes and to see them finishing the race or running the race. But we were lucky again, and I'd like to thank also Comrades Association, Comrades Marathon Association, to stage this Comrades visual race of the Legends race, which is at least our South African or our fellow runners, at least they've got something to do this year rather than to say, hey, the race was cancelled. But at least they done Comrades, and which is they are still the part of Comrades Marathon.
Okay, Martin, thank you so much for talking to us, and well done on seconding Nkosi Corner there. We remember that agonizing race last year when he just fell out of the positions, finishing in number 11 when he was on course, I beg your pardon, to take the 9th position there. And this, hopefully next year, he can do well in the colors of Mr. Price. Thank you so much for talking to us, and we look forward to the 2021 race.
No, thank you so much, you guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Let's have a look at the multiple men's winners of the Comrades Marathon. We looked a little earlier at the women's. And there you are, Bruce. 9th place, 9 medals, 1st place, I should say. It's certainly not 9th place. Top of that list of multiple men's winners, and way ahead of the others, 4 more than Jackie Meckler, and a whole lot of people there. I suppose records are there to be broken. Well, let me ask Kewan this question. Do you think 9 can be broken, Kewan, in the modern era?
I'll be totally honest with you. In the men's race, I don't see that happening. To win 9 consecutive Comrades like Bruce did is just out of this world. We nearly saw it happen in the women's race with Elena Nagalieva. So perhaps if it could happen in the women's race, it could perhaps go to Gerda. But I know she does also have other ambitions, such as the Olympic marathon. But I'm going to say on the men's side of the race, I don't see anyone coming close to the feats that Bruce accomplished. It was just out of this world. And I don't see anyone winning more than 9 times.
Is that a record of yours, Bruce, that you don't see getting broken anytime soon?
David, the great Wally Hayward, who's also on that list, as you saw, and I think he's the greatest Comrades runner ever, because he won 5, but was declared a professional and also gave up running the Comrades for 20 years. I'm certain he would have won more. And also his running the Comrades in 1988 at the age of 3 weeks shy of his 80th birthday has to be the greatest single Comrades performance of all time. He said to me, Bruce, I think it was in very wise words, he said, Bruce, we borrow records, but we keep titles. And a record, whether you break the record in the course, I mean, Gerda's fantastic time last year, someday another lady will come along and break that record. You borrow records, but you keep titles. No one will be ever able to take from Gerda that she was the 2019 women's champion. And I thought that was quite a wise thing for Wally to say. So someday somebody will come along and win 10 Comrades. I'm just really delighted and proud to have written a chapter or so into the history of the Comrades. And I still pinch myself every day that, and sorry if I sound emotional, every day that I could have had the honor of winning, I think, one of the world's greatest races, and the only ultramarathon that stands in the same pantheon of great marathons like the Boston Marathon, the London Marathon, the New York. Comrades is particularly unique in that it's the only ultra that stands in amongst those other races. So yeah, I constantly remind myself that you borrow records, but you keep titles. So I will always be the 1990 winner of Comrades. But all my records are gone. I mean, at one time I was the record holder for the up and the down, and those times have been shattered. I'm delighted to say my down run completely obliterated by David Khatebe. What a fantastic run. And at the time I was trying to figure out how someone could run faster, because I remember going down the Berea thinking you can't turn your legs over any faster than this, so you're going to hold this record forever, mate. Well, I proved myself wrong quite quickly. But if I can just say on behalf of all the winners and that fantastic list there, we have all been privileged to carry the winner's baton more than once across the finish line. And it is one of the greatest honors ever. And I remember finishing, I think it was 88 Comrades, and Vrenny Welsh, who's an absolutely wonderful lady who has done so much for running and is part of the Rand Athletic Club. As I came into the stadium, she said to me, Bruce, welcome home. Welcome home. And home is the finish line for all of us. And so for all Comrades runners, and so to lead the Comrades marathon runners home as the first finisher is an honor. I have no idea it's hard to describe it. And in that 1988 race, my seconds came to me right near the end. I had about 2 kilometers to run, and they said, China, you know how we greet each other. I'm like, China, you've got a 10-minute lead and no one's going to catch you. Enjoy it. And I froze that moment forever to keep for myself the honor of leading the Comrades. I had 2 kilometers to go. My legs were very sore. I lost a couple of toenails, but I was running very fast. I knew I was strong. I can still taste the funny taste of the drinks we drink, the corn sugar drinks we drink. Was like making my mouth tacky, and some sweat had come down and was dripping into my eye, and taking the sunscreen. But to lead the Comrades is the proudest moment of your life. And I said, freeze this moment forever. Keep it in your memory forever. If ever I'm depressed, slightly disappointed with myself, lonely or sad, I can literally thaw that moment out and take myself back there and say, you once led the Comrades Marathon. There's nothing more to say. It's just the greatest honor. And if I'm emotional and I sound it, I am, because it is incredible.
To be a multiple winner, Bruce, it doesn't mean that all the races were easy, and you certainly had some jewels, as others on that list will have had. Talk to us about some of your rivalries with the likes of Hosea Chale, Bob Delamotte, and some of those who would be planning year after year to beat Bruce Fordyce in that era of dominance.
Well, you know, as I have a great bond with most of them. I mean, you're only great runner because they were great, because you can't run those times unless somebody forces you to run that time to win. So I'm surprised we haven't heard more of Alan Robb today. But my personal hero when I started was Alan Robb. I was a young Bitsy, and it was my job to invite him at that stage, he had won the Comrades once. I invited him to be the guest speaker at one of our pre-Comrades functions. And I remember staring at him. I just stared and stared at him like he was a Martian. I was trying to work out what is so special about this guy that he's won it. What is special about Alan Robb? He is gentle, mild, modest. If you had to speak to Alan for a whole day and you didn't know it, you would never find out that he had won the Comrades Marathon. Speak to me for 5 minutes and I'll tell you. So I'm just a complete contrast. And he was one of my heroes. He was incredibly hard to beat. And of all my runs, the 1982 down run against Alan was the hardest race I've ever run. We broke away together going down Botha's Hill. And notice how I say it's Botha's Hill, not Botha's
well
Hill.
Done.
This is KZN. They have never heard of Botha's Hill. It is Botha's Hill, and it is Kloof. not
Yes.
Kroof, it's KZN. So we broke away together, and a runner called Henry Niembi came with us, who finished 7th that day. And I remember Henry saying, this pace is too fast, so I'm gone. And for the next 20 Ks, the two of us went shoulder to shoulder, and I eventually pulled ahead of Alan, but it's what they call a Pyrrhic victory. I won, but the cost was so dreadful. I was so broken at the finish. I looked around twice going around the Spanish stadium to see if anyone was coming, because I couldn't believe I could be leading the race running so slowly. So Alan was a fantastic rival. Sorry, please tell me if I'm dominating the conversation too much.
I'm loving the stories. You just keep going.
Hosea Charlie is, I think, one of the greatest ultramarathons South Africa has ever produced who didn't win Comrades. He won everything else. He won the Two Oceans, the City to City in those days, the Peter Corky, the London to Brighton. He won everything. He just didn't win Comrades. And if I could change the Comrades marathon, there he is. Yeah, we can see him. Horse as we affectionately know him. I would give Horse one of my wins, because he just thoroughly deserved to be a Comrades champion. Bob de la Motte, incredibly hard to beat going down, or somebody who believed he would win. Not hoped he would win, believed he would win. And when he didn't win, he would just say, well, I'll do it next year. Mark Page, very good. And in the early days, Johnny Halberstadt. I think Johnny Halberstadt is, and Kewan might agree with me here, the greatest all-around distance runner we've ever had in this country. His range of ability was so he had a sub 4-minute mile. I could never get anywhere near that. He won the NCAA's triple title, 10,000 meters college title in the States. He came 3rd in the Boston Marathon. Any road race you name anywhere in South Africa, he won it, usually twice. He just didn't win Comrades. He came 2nd twice. And I'm going to leave somebody out, and they're going to hate me forever and ever. Nick Bester, tough guy, but as I said, he was the one who finally broke my streak. Sam Shabalala, a fantastic guy to run. The people that I raced against, those men were legends. I mean, very, very difficult. You've got an idea when you run 3.5 minutes a kilometer for 90 Ks to get away from them. It's tough. As you can see, I'm broken, hunched, and not quite the same as I used to be. That was the cost. But it's an honor to have raced against those guys.
I'd love looking at that footage of the young Bruce Fordyce. It's lovely seeing that footage again. And I suppose one of the things, Bruce, was that we had so little else to watch sports-wise that we became fixated on the Comrades Marathon. I know to some extent these days there's so much more variety, but I wonder if you weren't dominating in the golden era of Comrades television. We'll talk to Jan Snyman in a short while, but you guys became celebrities, didn't you?
We did, yeah. I mean, and by the way, you mentioned the gold and the locks gone, but anyway, I've managed to come to terms with that. I was gorgeous, but yes, we did. We because of sporting isolation, South Africa was almost forced to turn in on itself and watch. And if you talk to the cricketers, I remember talking to the very sadly missed Clive Rice, who's a great mate of mine. He would say the Transvaal, as it was then, Western Province game at Newlands was sold out for a provincial game. So we had very little. And the same with the Currie Cup rugby, sold out. We had very little, so we turned in and we looked at what we did have. So maybe for Comrades, that was a wonderful, wonderful bonus in that people watched Comrades. And I still get stopped by people who say, you've got no idea how much I hate sport. But every single Comrades day, we woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, we made breakfast, and we watched that race all day long. And not just the winners. I mean, as we all know, the most dramatic moment of Comrades is that final dreadful cutoff gun. And nowhere else in the rest of the world does that happen in any marathon. There is no cutoff. If you run New York, and I've run a few of those, it can be midnight. They better be there and take your time and give you a medal. It's just, but only in Comrades do we have that brutal cutoff gun, which just also is part of the whole DNA of the Comrades. The brutal cutoff gun is massive. So yeah, just sorry if I'm waxing lyrical, but I just love Comrades so much, and I love that event. And I think the sporting boycott at the time worked very well. Obviously now, wonderful people like Cheryl and the whole CMA have grown the race even more. Wonderful characters have come along to grow it even more. And it is just so rich with history, tradition, drama, passion, that I don't know why anyone would not watch it. Just to me, Comrades, watching that, the only thing I can equate it to is the same emotion is Cheslin Colby's try.
Yes, very good.
A few months ago when he scored against England and he did that little punch. That was the same feeling I had as when I watched Comrades.
Yeah, and a wonderful feeling that will be shared by all the other men on that list. Kuan, I want to pick your brain a little bit about Bongimusa Mthembu, whose name also appears on the list of multiple men's winners. This week, I was in a press conference where we spoke to 2012 champion Ludwig Mamabolo, and he says although Bongimusa didn't win last year, he still believes that Bongimusa is the man to beat in this current era of Comrades Marathon. And he says that he would like to come back and win the race again. And he says Bongimusa for him remains the man to beat. We saw last year how he was attacked by Mutibi and others going up in Changa and then all the way to the finish. Can Bongimusa win again? And what makes him such a great Comrades champion, both up and down?
Yeah, 100%. Bongimusa can definitely win Comrades again. As you mentioned, he just lost out on that title last year to Edward Mutibi. But one thing I can also say about Bongimusa is, as Bruce will also know, the former likes of Dmitry Grishin, Vladimir Kotov, former multiple winners who could only win it on the up run, but could never ever do well when it came to the down. And Bongimusa was the same as that. Every year it went down, he was the man to beat. He won it a few times. But then every single year that the Comrades Marathon went towards Pietermaritzburg on the up run, he would never finish in the top 10. So I even remember in 2017, he was looking good going into the race. But because he had never done well in the up run, I had him down as like an outside favorite for a top 10. And then he went and won the race. So he cemented himself as both an up and down winner. And then, just missed out on that victory last year. He's a really humble guy. He trains really hard. His coach down in Durban, Kolani Mabida, they've got a very good, strong team around them. And Bongimusa focuses solely on the Comrades Marathon. I definitely think that Bongimusa is definitely a force to be reckoned with. He's made for ultra distance running. He's got a very strong build. Almost reminds me of Nick Bester, that Ironman type body type. And Bongimusa definitely going into next year's race. I'll also put Edward there as a defending champ. But Bongimusa definitely for a good few years coming up will be the man to beat.
Wonderful scenes there. I do want to go back to some of the other names that we saw on that list. And Bruce, it was interesting that you were saying that Wally Hayward, you felt he was one of the great runners. I think it's worth pointing out that his first victory came in 1930 and his second win came in 1950. I know there was a war in between, but between 1930 and 1940, he could have been winners there. It's incredible that he's got that time difference of 20 years. Let's have a look. We've got some footage of Wally Hayward winning in 1930.
I'm hearing them, yes. Hello.
In 1930, 55 runners started the up race. Amongst all the newcomers to the race was the Johannesburg Wanderers runner, Wally Hayward, wearing number 2. He was the current 10-mile track champion, and at the age of 21 had surprised the pundits by entering for such a long distance. Hayward had reached Drummond in 3 hours 20 minutes, but tired visibly towards the end. Despite cramps and walking up the hills, he reached the finish line just 37 seconds ahead of Phil Masterton-Smith. Hayward was rewarded with a grandfather clock, and this was the last year that sections of the road were still untarred.
So that's something that I find absolutely amazing about those early runners. They ran on untarred roads. Mosabudi and I were talking about this, the lousy shoes that they would have had, the bad advice on nutrition. To achieve the times they were doing, Kieran, Bruce, it's phenomenal what they were able to achieve. And I see why you say that Wally Hayward is the great Comrades runner, Bruce.
Yes, I mean, I think if you debated who the greatest runner is, it has to be Wally because in his heyday he was never beaten. So he only, if I can use that word, ran 5, but he won all 5. He was the first man to break 6 hours going down, and then he had that hiatus after those 5 runs. But as you say, between 1930 and 1950, he didn't run at all. And that was, he told me, because he hated the Comrades experience. His first Comrades run, he was leading by 20 minutes at Drummond at halfway. And he won, I think, by 20, 30 seconds from Phil Masters and Smith, who, by the way, had the second closest Comrades marathon of all time against Noel Bure. I think 1931, he won by 2 seconds. But so Wally didn't enjoy his first Comrades experience and went away from it and had a glittering career at other distances. Then when he came back, he won 4 more. Undoubtedly would have won more if he hadn't been banned as a professional. And then came back and ran twice in 1988 and 1989, in just short of 80 and then just short of 81. And he beautifully proved there, I think, the magnificent gift that Comrades is to everybody. You don't necessarily have to be number 1 to be a winner. Wally Hayward did not win the 1988 Comrades. I did. And I hope you can detect a certain amount of bitterness in my voice, because that old goat, and I'm saying that with affection, stole all the media coverage, all the TV coverage, all the people wanting autographs, beautiful women draping themselves all over him. And Frith van der Merwe, who won that year, and I sat on our own having a quiet cup of tea while everybody flocked around him. And he proved that at the age of 80, you run the Up Comrades in 9 hours, 45 minutes. That means he beat that dreadful cutoff gun by 2.25 hours. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, at 80, you're supposed to be dead, not finishing the Comrades Marathon in that time. And he did. And he showed that you don't necessarily have to be number 1 to be a winner, because on that day, Wally Hayward was the greatest winner of all of us. And so I think if you push me in a corner, the 3 greatest runs that I ever saw were Alan Robb's 1978 down run, when he won by 20 minutes and broke 5.5 hours for the first time. Frith van der Merwe 1989, 5:54, and Wally Hayward, age of 89:45. And now, squeezed in amongst them, if you could have another color medal, I have to squeeze in Gerda Steyn. But Wally's run was just completely phenomenal. There is no way I can answer that except to say that I have plans for the year 2035.
Before we go to Jan Snem, and Kieran, just to push you in a corner, Bruce has raised the issue of the great runs and the great runners, and singling out Wally Hayward. Can you be as conclusive as Bruce is about these issues, about who's the greatest runner, what are the greatest runs?
Yeah, I think Bruce pretty much summed it up perfectly there. I also agree that Wally Hayward, without a doubt, has to be the best of the best. You know, to win the race, come back 20 years later, win it again, and then, you know, at age 79 and 80, that sub 10-hour Comrades, it was phenomenal. If I also had to put down memorable races, it would definitely be the list that Bruce just mentioned. Alan's sub 5 hours 30-minute run, Frith's 5:54 down run. You know, Wally Hayward's finish, I would throw in as well David Khatebe, 5:18:19, really out of this world, like no one's ever come close. And then, of course, Gerda Steyn's up run, that 5:58 on the up run, finishing 17th overall, phenomenal experiences. And then I'll add one more in, 1997 Comrades Marathon, Percy Dunn running a sub 6 hour Comrades Marathon dressed as the All Sorts Licorice Man. So that was pretty phenomenal there as well.
Don't forget that the virtual Comrades Marathon race is still on the go. You have until midnight tonight to run your virtual race, and it's not a 90 kilometer or 89 that you need to run. You can run 5Ks as well. All the details have been up on the Comrades Marathon website. We've heard over 40,000 people have entered it. It really has been a bit of a game changer, and it'll be so interesting to see how the Comrades Marathon Association approaches the 2021 version of the Comrades Marathon. Now, working on this particular broadcast, we have some veterans of the SABC in our producer, director Scott Seward, Mike Domain, Richard Parker, who are all involved here. They all worked on the Comrades Marathon back in the 80s when it became quite a pioneering broadcast, and we are absolutely delighted to welcome one of the early commentators of the Comrades Marathon when he worked at the SABC. If you're of my generation, you will well know Jan Snyman, and he joins us now. Jan, my goodness, you have not changed. Do you not age, man?
Good evening, gentlemen. It's really very nice to talk to you and join you. And when I got the call from Scott Seward, I went on a hike on memory lane, going back to 1976, when television started in South Africa. And of course, one of the big events on our calendar every year since 1976 had been the Comrades Marathon. But the only thing that we could do at that stage, we didn't have everything going our way as far as equipment is concerned, et cetera, and also experience. We had to take our film cameras down to Durban and do a highlights package of about 20 minutes on the day. And that would have been edited, and the commentary would have been put alongside it. And we had to wait another, let's say, fortnight after the Comrades Marathon before we could broadcast it. But everyone, of course, viewers would want to say that, why can't you broadcast it now? We didn't have the know-how, to be quite honest, to broadcast it. This went on from 1976 until 1982, and I can't remember whether it was the end of 1982 or the beginning of 1983, when Robin Kempthorne, who was head of Outside Broadcasts, walked into my office one morning and posed me the question, and he asked me, would you say yes to a live broadcast 12 hours long of the Comrades Marathon next year, that is 1983? And I looked him in the eye, I said, why do you ask the question? He said, because I think we have reached the stage where we can do it. We have the equipment, we have got the experience now, and we can do it. I said, but what about my friend? I was the head of Afrikaans sport on TV, and Trevor Quirk was the head of sport on the English side, but he had already been to Trevor and said, dear friend, I can't imagine myself watching 15,000 pairs of tackies hit the tar for 12 hours long. That will just not work out as far as television is concerned. I told Robin, I think I am with you, and I'm going to leave you now, and I'm going up to Peter de Bruin, who was our deputy general manager responsible for television. And I asked him, would he allow us to do the Comrades Marathon in 1983 live from 5:30 in the morning, ending at 6 o'clock that evening? And he said, you go ahead and make a success of it. And that's how it started. And the first producer who did it was Butch Smith, who had to get everything in order. It was like building a house. And, from the foundation up. The equipment we had in 1983, compared to the equipment that is available now, is like chalk and cheese, because it was huge cameras. It was a sweat. It was something out of this world. We used motorbikes on the road, helicopters up in the air, and I'd say we did the best we could, but we got a lot of accolades from the viewers that we eventually did that. And the fact of the matter is that since then, 1983, the Comrades Marathon had been on the air every single year with different producers, but I think the producer whom I would call the father of the Comrades Marathon is Scott Seward, because the way that Scott Seward went about planning the entire broadcast from start to finish, every single moment was planned to a T. And he won his accolades during his career with the SABC, but he made it something really worthwhile.
Well, I can tell you Scott Seward right now is playing this overlay, or instructing, making sure that this footage of the 1983 Comrades Marathon is playing while we chat to you. So he's still very actively involved in TV broadcasts about Comrades Marathon, Jan. Can you remember who all your commentators and co-commentators were? Because you really had to make it up as you went along on how to commentate for such a long period.
I remember that at the start we had Ian Laxton, and he was there for many a year. I left the SABC in 1987, and of course it's still going strong. We had in the studio, I was in the studio at some time, most of the times, and Riel Houman, who is a journalist and a very, very guy who knows his sport, who knows long distances, marathons particularly. He was in the studio with me on many occasions. And then Edwin van Aarde was the commentator at the end. And of course, we had commentators during the course on the route itself. The names I can't remember that, but they were there. We started very small, but you know, as you go along, it grows on you, and the producers come up with marvelous ideas. And the thing is that where we started off, it was a bit, how shall I say, not really up to standard or up to scratch, but the way it's being done now, after so many years, I can be very proud of what had been done and what we have achieved for our viewers. And the fact of the matter is that when television came and we did the broadcast year after year, we also saw the growth in the participation of the Comrades Marathon. And when we talk about television licenses for broadcast, the problems we had with rugby, who wouldn't allow us to broadcast rugby live. Those were the days, you know, when we started off, where we had other sports like athletics, like the Comrades Marathon, like tennis, who came to us and said, please come along, we can build the sport. And that is exactly what television did in many occasions when we did concentrate on those kind of sports. Look at golf, what happened to golf? Don't tell me that because we do the golf tournaments in South Africa, the patrons stay away. No, they don't. The more we do it, the more they come along.
Well, we're just looking at footage now of Adrian Steed doing some vox pops, as they're called, on the route. So he was obviously involved as well. You may not have shared Trevor Quirk's pessimism about this working, though. Were you surprised, Jan, at how well received it was and how you'd actually pulled off a 12-hour or 11.5-hour broadcast?
Well, the thing is, we were very, very proud of ourselves. You know, when, as a matter of fact, right from the start, we were proud that we even ventured to do this. You know, things can go wrong and it can go horribly wrong. But the fact of the matter is, we tried our best, and sometimes your best isn't good enough. But as the years rolled on, it became better and better and more professional. And the fact of the matter is that we could bring the drama that you're seeing at the moment, we could bring that into the houses of our viewers. And that's what makes the Comrades Marathon such a wonderful experience every year, because these things don't just happen. You know, it's you don't need a commentary to explain exactly what is happening there.
Yeah, exactly. Colin Huerson crawling over the line. That was, I think, something I remember so well from 1983. Jan, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for your memories. Really do appreciate it. And it's lovely seeing you look so well and healthy, and your voice sounds just as I remember it. I believe you have just turned 81.
I've turned 81, yep. But still going strong, still doing sport on Radio Helderberg. But I'm on a sabbatical at the moment because there's no sport in the country. God, I've got nothing to do. So I'm glad that I had the opportunity to just give my views on the Comrades Marathon and sport in general.
It's lovely seeing you again. Thanks very much to Jan Snyman. Now, that was a name and a face from my youth. Thank you so much, Jan. To bring back some memories for you watching a bit more footage of that particular race, Bruce?
It did, yes, it did. Two things. I just want to say thank you, Jan Snyman, for everything you did for Comrades. Amazing to see Jan, just one of the great characters of the race. And you don't necessarily have to be somebody who ran to be one of the great characters of the race. And then, my good mate Colin Huerson, I've forgotten how long he crawled. Wow, he crawled a long way. But that's the desperation of trying to win the last gold medal. And Colin, crawled across the line to get the last gold medal. And that was a really, really well produced and well filmed and well covered Comrades Marathon. To all those people, Edwin Vollenharder, everybody who was involved at that time. Well done. It was a brilliant Comrades, and it was particularly good for me because they made me look good. So, special Comrades Marathon.
Kieran, you work on the broadcast. It's a cast of thousands, isn't it? It's a huge effort. I did 2 for the SABC. I couldn't believe how much went into it. Just give our viewers now some perspective from your side on that broadcast of the Comrades Marathon.
Yeah, from my side, I've got my green number, so to speak, in commentating. I've done over 10 Comrades Marathon broadcasts for the SABC. Just as I can say, an honor just to be part of the event and the history and of the race. But it is a lot that goes into it, from the production team to the cameramen, the riggers, everyone that puts everything up together. In terms of what my day would look like in terms of a commentator, I would need to be at the finish venue where the broadcast and the studio is set up at 3:30 in the morning on race day. Sit in the very icy cold outside studio there with Valen Kirtley and others. And then once the race starts at 5:30, we would cover the race the whole day. And by the end of the day, I don't really have a voice left after talking for over 12 hours. I'm sure people don't want to hear me speaking again for the rest of the year. But it's a long day, and having run the race myself as well, it's quite a weird feeling being there commentating, because all you want to do is actually be on the road running the race itself and feeling that pain. That's the amazing hold that a race like the Comrades Marathon has over you.
Kieran, what makes a good commentator, especially for such a long broadcast? I'm sure there must be times when the race seems to meander, the gold medalists are all in, the silver medalists are all in, and we're kind of now waiting between Silva and Bill Rowan or later. So what makes a good Comrades marathon commentator, and how do you prepare for race day?
For me, I would say I'm a little bit lucky when it comes to the elite runners. It didn't really work out for me in school, but when it comes to the Comrades Marathon and elite athletes themselves, I can remember what running shoes even the athletes in previous years. But, as much as the race, it's really nice to watch the elite guys coming through and, the heroes like the Gadders, the Anns, Edwards and Balmooses. The real race is about, the other 25,000 odd athletes that are making that trek between Durban and Pietermaritzburg. They are what makes up the Comrades Marathon. Without those athletes, there wouldn't be, a huge race like the Comrades Marathon. And, that's where a good commentator can just, tell the story, what's happening in the race. A lot of family and loved ones are looking out for their family members, friends, work colleagues that are coming through at those times. So you just talk a bit about the race. Having run it before also helps a lot because you can really relate to what the runners are going through and, talk about the routes where runners are at certain points. And then also talk about the behind the scenes at Comrades. Like, not many people will know that there's over a ton of bananas that are used on race day. Quite random facts like that, but that just goes to make the history of Comrades what it is today.
I do want to talk
Guys,
about...
can I just interrupt for a second and just say I've commentated with Kewan.
We've got... Oh, sorry, Bruce, carry on. You carry on, Bruce.
No, I just want to say he's the most knowledgeable, he's a walking encyclopedia on running. And it's a privilege to commentate alongside him because whenever you run dry, you just pass the ball to Kewan and he will give you a list of, but not only that, he knows everything about every marathon runner in the world. We don't want to lose him because one of these days, Boston Marathon or New York is going to discover that that Kewan knows everything and they're going to snap him up. So Kewan, it's always been wonderful to commentate alongside you because you're actually you're the central pillar. You hold the whole thing together.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and likewise on my side, just to be able to share the same seat with a 9 times winner like yourself and, all the fellow commentators that have come and gone throughout the years. It's just amazing to be able to share that experience. So thank you very much.
Well, one thing that I love about both of you is that your incredible depth of knowledge. And Bruce, I've had the occasion to interview you many times about the Comrades, and I've known that you do have quite a knowledge of the history, but it's only today I realized just how deep it goes. You have dredged up names from the past, which I find absolutely fascinating. I love the history of the Comrades, and I love the fact that we've got the Robert Mchali medal. Now, it's a man who ran in 1935. He didn't win the race. He was 3 hours after Bill Cochran, who won it in 1935. But what was special about Robert Mchali was that it's the time in which he ran. At a time where black runners had no recognition of any form, of any sort, and where laws were in place that ensured that he was excluded from so much of society, yet he ran the race. And I think it's wonderful that the Comrades Marathon Association recognizes people like Robert Mchali by having a medal named after him. So that's for people, if I got this right, who finished between 9 and 10 hours. Can either of you tell me anything more about Robert Mchali?
Wow. I know he ran in the 1930s, is that correct? Unofficially.
Yeah.
I believe,
unofficially, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that one of the runners who finished next to him gave him his medal. And he was cheered and celebrated all the way along the route, but he just wasn't official, which tells you already how Comrades has been a kind of a litmus paper about where South Africa should be. It's always been telling us, come on, guys, if we can all run together, we can all run this race. Why can't we do this as a nation? And I think it's fabulous that there's a medal named after him. I think 10 hours is a great time, and it's inspired a whole lot of people. And I know fellow Comrades runners all around the world who desperately want the Robert Mchali medal, and they would have been running for it today. And in fact, as we look now, it would all be over. But there would have been a lot of happy people having earned his medal.
In fact, you write about the way Robert Mchali was fated at the end, because in John Cameron Dow's wonderful book, The Comrades Marathon, The Ultimate Race, he talks about a councillor, I'm presuming it could have been the mayor at the time, who gave him a special award. But it's wonderful that his name now is so synonymous with Comrades Marathon that there is a medal named after him. I think we're going to be joined now by the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. We have got Sikle Zikalala joining us on our special program. Mr. Premier, thank you very much for your time. Good evening.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for having us on your program. We extend our best wishes to all athletes, the legends, and those who are still running.
Yep, they're still out there. We'd imagine it would be a very different day for you had there been no lockdown. You'd probably be at the Moses Mabhida Stadium welcoming the runners in. How is lockdown treating you as Premier?
Well, of course, it is a challenging moment, and it's affecting both in terms of our social orientation, but also in terms of economic landscape. By now, we know that many people would have been in Durban and Pietermaritzburg, but nevertheless, we believe that the decisions by government to impose or to direct us to the lockdown is for the good cause, and we therefore believe that next year we will have a successful Comrades Marathon.
Mhlonishwa, you are quite an active person, if your social media is anything to go by. You often post videos of exercising. I mean, as a public figure, when you're a premier, also a public figure, is it important for you to exercise and stay fit and healthy? And will you ever be on the road between Durban and Pietermaritzburg running 89 or 91 or whatever it is kilometers?
Well, though I haven't run the marathon per se, but I'm hopeful that soon I will do the full Comrades Marathon. We will want to continue encouraging the people to stay fit. And that's why today I dedicated some time to run. And I did something like 14.5 kilometers running. And I will want to encourage all people to stay fit. Physical exercise is important because it also shapes your mind and your thinking.
Mr. Premier, well, it's been wonderful hearing from you, and I'm encouraged to hear that you have a Comrades Marathon on your horizon. Did I understand that right? You say you are one day going to run the Comrades Marathon.
One day I will definitely participate, and I want to encourage all athletes not to lose hope. It was just for this year because of the pandemic, but we want to all stay on course and be ready for next year. Let us train. Let us ensure that we prepare ourselves. Once the lockdown is over, we will again enjoy ourselves and the marathon.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Premier. That is the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Sikle Zikalala. And I believe we have we're being joined now by another big name from the Comrades Marathon, not only as a former winner, is one of the great warriors. Bruce Ford, I spoke about the great rivalry that he had with Nick Bester, but also Nick Bester is one of these men who has trained and brought some of the great Comrades Marathon winners to the fore. So we will we'll have a chat to him in a few minutes' time as soon as we can get him up. Just to remind you of what's happening today, it's the virtual race, and we have been so encouraged by the number of people who've been taking part in the virtual race. What is the number we had, Mosabudi? Something like 43,000 people.
Yeah, 43,000. Yeah,
had taken part in the virtual race, and you do have until midnight to complete it. In fact, if as we heard from Colin Hector from Championship, you've got anywhere in your time zone up until midnight. So there'll be people in Hawaii who might be still running the race. Let's have a look at Savages Club. They've been sending through some photographs as well. So these are the people from Savages. A lot of people running with the number 1 in memory of. Okay, there we got some of the people.
Yes. Lovely photos there, and that's they're all running in honor of the late Clive Crawley. Yes, she also ran for Savages when she was still a cross-country runner, and she has remained with the club ever since. Of course, this is one of the iconic Comrades Marathon clubs, having given us the Comrades Marathon, and there they are celebrating the legend's life as they run the virtual race.
And I love the fact that they're paying tribute to the man who passed away and wore the number 1, Clive Crawley. Is that number 1 for Clive Crawley, or that's one done? Yeah. It's all number 1 for Clive Crawley, that as it turns out. So well done to Savages for the way in which they've done. They've embraced this particular virtual marathon. And I loved seeing this morning the number of people who are out running and had their Comrades numbers on.
And their club colours as well. They all went out in their club colours. He didn't just put on his old T-shirt and shorts. He wore his full club kit, and everyone was out there wearing their club colours as though they were running the Comrades Marathon in official race colours. So.
Well, let's find out if Nick Bester was wearing his green vest this morning, who joins us now. Hey, Nick, good to see you. Good evening. Now, for some reason, are we going to get some... Sorry, Nick, we don't seem to have the audio from you. We're going to try it again, find out why we don't have any audio. I'm going to bring Kieran in. Let's just talk about Nick Bester, Kieran, as one of the great Comrades competitors, but also as one of the great Comrades coaches.
Yeah, definitely. Nick winning the race back in 1990, where he dethroned Bruce, and taking the victory there. Sorry, 1991. And now, national team manager of the very dominant Netbank running club, and now coach extraordinaire. The things that he's done with Gerda Steyn, where in 2017 finishing 4th in Comrades 6:45, now breaking 6 hours, as we've mentioned a few times last year, and a 2:27 marathon at the New York Marathon, which is not a really fast course. We haven't seen the full potential of Gerda. And Nick Bester, motivating thousands of athletes across the country, around the world as well, and a great gentleman of the sport.
Let's see if we can get Nick back. Don't know if you can hear us all right, can you, Nick?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm on.
And we can hear you as well. Did you go running today, Nick?
Yes, I did run because we've got a personal challenge, because between all Comrades previous winners, you have to beat your age on a 10 kilometer, and women have to beat their age, 10 kilometer time plus their age. And we run a race against all of the legions, myself, Bruce Fordyce, even the Comrades Marathon Association chairperson, Cheryl Wynn, is competing, pushing her husband, Cheryl Wynn, in a wheelchair. We've got Leonard Svetsov, Oleg Koritonov, Gerda Steyn, Edward Motivi, all the likes of that. It is a great race. This is the ultra marathon race in the world. And on the road, when I was running, there were so many people who stopped me when taking pictures and talking about the Comrades, and it's just emotional to see how much this race is meaning to thousands and millions of runners in the world.
What gives you greater pleasure, Nick, your own victory, or when you see the people you have coached coming in and winning?
Not my own victory. I'll be very honest with you. When I won the Comrades in 1991, it was as is going to be a formality. So that is not so major on my radar. On my radar is this race. I see this emblem of the race, the Comrades Marathon. I'm getting goosebumps. When I'm hearing the chalice of fire, I'm getting goosebumps. When I'm seeing people gunning for the last people to be home at the Comrades finish, wherever it is, in Durban or in Maritzburg, it's giving me goosebumps. It is not about me. It's about the race. This is the race. This is the race. Everybody is talking the whole week about this race, the Comrades Marathon. It's amazing. It's emotional, and it's an emotional part that pushed me to victory. I was not a great athlete. I was a triathlete. And when I decided to run the Comrades, I just get my emotional side behind the Comrades, and I won the Comrades. And that is amazing for me. When I went into Comrades, normally I sent my family to Durban to fly 2 to 3 days before I depart. And then I motivate myself. I listen to Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, all these artists, and then motivate myself. And that is the race. It is an emotional race.
Nick, you mentioned that you were a triathlete, and I think you were a pioneer in that time because you were doing triathletes. I think you were also canoeing. You were doing a lot of cycling, so you did a lot of cross training. Do you encourage athletes nowadays to do a lot of cross training when they are training for Comrades, be it cycling, canoeing, swimming?
I can tell you that running is the most demanding race in the world. You put down your feet on the ground, you're distracting your body. Every step you do, you are breaking down. So what I discovered is that cross training is the best way to prepare for Comrades. You run the limited amount of mileage. You substitute the rest of the junk mileage that you have to go and do and jog by cycling, canoeing, cross training, walking, etc. To enhance your body. You do the same kind of training. You actually save your body with the amount of jarring on your body. When I was doing my 10K this morning, I was going quite well. I started over 425K per kilometer, then 430, then 435, then 440. And then the last 3-4 kilometers, I was suffering because I could feel my calf muscle was going to pull, because that is running, is jarring on the body. Running is the most jarring and, I would say, tough sport on the body. Sacrifice and supplementing with cross training, and then that's my kind of philosophy, and that's how I train my athletes for Comrades and my athletes competing in the world stage for the 50 kilometer and 100 kilometer championships.
Well, Nick, it's always a pleasure chatting to you, and I know it's a bit of a frustrating time for you, but I do appreciate you joining us on our special Comrades Marathon, virtual Comrades Marathon broadcast. All the best, and we'll chat in 2021.
Yes, thank you. Looking forward to 2021. We all hope that everything will be fine and COVID-19 won't be COVID-21. And yeah, let's have a great Comrades coming to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the fabulous Nick Bester. And now let's go to the head of marketing for Mr. Price Sport. We're joined by Dylan Cherry. Dylan, thank you very much for joining us. Good evening.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
We are very good, and you are appropriately branded as well. We've got you on there, all sorts of things we could be chatting about with Mr. Price Sport. We were talking about the brand earlier, how synonymous you've become with the Comrades Marathon. Can you take us back and tell us about that association, how it came about?
Yeah, so the Comrades Marathon actually has had quite a long partnership with Mr. Price, and started in the early 2000s, where we used to actually provide the entries. You could enter at a Mr. Price store around the country. And so we were kind of like the RT partner before the likes of Championship came along. And yeah, it was always an amazing thing. I wasn't with the group back then, but it was an amazing thing to see the Comrades and the Mr. Price partnership and how they work together. I think this kind of virtual event has really shifted things. But it's amazing to see how the Comrades has kind of moved with the times and got on board with this virtual race. And it's quite exciting to see the types of people that have got involved and become part of the race. But to your question, I mean, Mr. Price Sport, the division that I work for, is actually only started in 2006, and so we're quite new on the scene in terms of our age, but yeah, enjoying this new partnership with the Comrades, and really an opportunity for us to showcase some of our technical product and give people the opportunity to get an affordable product that does the job of being active.
On that point about the technical products that you offer, I mean, for the longest time, the South African runner has believed that the more expensive the running shoe, if I'm going to spend 12 hours in it, the better. And so when Mr. Price Sport came out with the Comrades shoe, the Max Elite shoe that David Khatebe won in, people were like, no, that shoe's different. The one they made for him is not the one you'll buy at a Mr. Price store. And I remember a furious debate on Facebook where Q1 was people and telling them that it's actually a pretty good shoe, and he tried it out himself. But have you seen greater interest in your running shoes because of the association with Comrades?
Yes, I think it was kind of like the best kept secret, if you want to call it. I remember when I joined Mr. Price Sport, Kieran was still there actually, and I think we just won another 5 gold medals or so, and so it was the first thing I looked at and said, we have to let people know about this, that we've actually got, so many runners actually coming in the top 10 and winning in our shoe. And, it's the same shoe you can buy in the store for 459 Rand.
How has lockdown affected your marketing strategy now, not only for Comrades, but going forward, Dylan?
So, yeah, we've been obviously taking quite a bit of a focus on the online and social media channels. And this virtual race has really been something that's blown that wide open for us to, kind of see the participation and the people who are involved in online, and like we're doing now with this virtual race, we can obviously see that it's kind of like the new normal, if you want to call it.
Now, I believe you've got something to show us, Dylan.
Oh yes, so I was going to share with you guys some of the team that have been running with us this morning, and so we had some of our team from our office who were participating in some of the shorter distances, and I'll just share that with you quickly. So this was our HR people and our man Thomas Thornhill from our resourcing department enjoying a Coke. He ran the 21K this morning, and our lady from HR there, Joanna Bond, she ran a 5K, and her husband a 10K. So yeah, it was great to see some of the team out there and taking part in the race, or in the virtual run, I should say, the challenge. And then also these are just some images from our let me just get it up there for you guys.
I can see that you've been doing a lot of this during lockdown, meetings where you screen sharing, haven't you, Dylan?
Yeah. So here is Nkosi Kona, who ran 90 Ks, and yeah, he was cramping, as Martin was telling us earlier during the run, but I just thought what an amazing effort to run 90 Ks I mean, he had the support of Prodigal and some of the guys there, but I just thought, without the hype of the race going around you, he really put in a great effort today and ran the full 90. Prodigal ran the 21, and I think we had a team member running in each distance. But I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Well, I'm glad you did.
And here is Prodigal. Sorry?
No, just saying I'm glad you shared it. Have you got something more? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. So Prodigal ran the 21 in a time of 1 hour and 11 minutes and 19 seconds. And then that was Charles Tijani. I think he wanted to try and give the full distance a go, but came up with 47 kilometers, which is nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, those were just some of the images from the day, and obviously all shared via social media. And yeah, enjoyed seeing all the activity and the guys getting out there and enjoying themselves.
Oh, very nice. A final question for you, Dylan. Are you amazed, impressed at the way this virtual race has taken off with 43,000 people, not only here in South Africa, but around the world getting involved? That might unlock a few more marketing strategies for Mr. Price Sport?
Yeah, so I was looking at that actually, and I saw that I think we had just over 70% were local entrants, and I was chatting with Colin, and he mentioned that over 1,000 people from Brazil. I mean, I thought it really is incredible. It does open us up, even I think for Comrades itself, to the rest of the world as an event. I mean, not that it isn't popular or well known worldwide, but I think it's an amazing thing to see the participation across the rest of the world.
Dylan, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and let's hope we see Mr. Price Sport back on the road sooner rather than later. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Yes, thanks, guys. Cheers.
That is Dylan Cherry, who's the head of marketing at Mr. Price Sport. They've obviously been a huge influence in the Comrades Marathon, Mosabudi.
Yeah, certainly. And whenever I go down to run the race, you'd always get the booklet in the last 10, 20 years, and read about Mr. Price, Durban-based company. Wander into the store, which you shouldn't be doing the day before the race, but there I was looking for a pair of socks, which is not the right thing to do. But yeah, I actually bought a pair of the shoes they were talking about after that conversation that we had with Kwan on Facebook about the quality of the shoes, and I was running in them earlier on this year, and they're actually a pretty good pair of shoes. Cool. But yeah, especially if you're light on your feet, great pair of shoes.
No, I'm thumping on my feet. Now we got a photograph of some of the kit they had in 1921. Let's have a look at that. Can you imagine running like this? Bruce Fordyce, this guy was running in his boots, but I do recall there is also a story in John Cameron Dow's book about somebody who ran. He was a Springbok rugby player, and he ran in his rugby boots. I don't know if either of you can remember who that was. I think it's in the 1920s.
Yes, Bill Payne.
Bill Payne. Exactly.
Yes, David, Bill Payne. He ran, I think, the second Comrades, maybe, whatever. And he ran it's legendary Comrades running. He ran in rugby boots the whole way. He stopped at Drummond for a chicken curry, and en route swallowed a couple of peach brandies and some schnapps, and then finished within the cut-off time. The following day, he had to play a rugby match. He played in what they would call in those days plimsolls, because his feet were sore from the rugby boots. He never ran Comrades again.
No. It's an amazing achievement that he actually did it. We're going to speak to Dr. Jeremy Bolter in a couple of seconds, but can we just talk about the nutrition, how things have changed when you consider starting in Comrades in the late 1970s? What were the things medically you had to do, dietary wise, the amount of fluids you had to take in? What was the medical advice that you used to adhere to then that are complete no-nos today?
Okay, well, I have to go back, Dave. I hope I've got a bit of time here. I have to go back to the 1974 British Lions.
Yeah.
Who, as you will recall, Willie John McBride's Lions gave the Springboks a 4-0 club. It was actually 3-0, but had there been a TMO in those days, it would have been 4-0.
Yeah,
and they clubbed
Ian
every single
McLaughlin's try would
provincial
have been
team
allowed.
ever. They were guards on the rugby field. JPR Williams, Willie John McBride, Phil Bennett. I can name every single one of them. And by the way, I'm a passionate Springbok supporter. So they gave us a thorough hiding. But one of the things they did was they were so frightened of the African sun, being Europeans coming out from Europe, that they took salt tablets to stave off cramps. And so this nutritional advice swept its way into running. And so when I ran my first Comrades in 1977, we swallowed salt tablets the whole way through the race so that we wouldn't cramp. We were completely astonished why we cramped horribly the whole way through the race because we were dehydrated. Then a couple of years later, and he's one of the great scientific sporting doctors, Dr. Ivan Cohen, decided that the solution would be, the danger was dehydration. And Ivan, and he's an old friend, I haven't seen him for years, but Ivan, if you're listening, I'm saying this with all affection and for everything you've done, the contribution to running, was that you had to fight off dehydration. So he worked out the exact solution that you had to drink that would drain the fastest from your stomach when you swallowed it. And so I was one of the guinea pigs who volunteered. We had tubes down our noses, and you had to swallow this tube down into your stomach without vomiting, and then run flat out for a couple of hours on a treadmill. I don't know. I wasn't even paid. I don't know why I did it. But anyway, and then they drained the remains out of your stomach after you had run yourself to exhaustion to see which had the most amount of fluid and which one had drained the most. So that was a liter of water with some glucose or sugar added and a pinch of salt. And then came my era, the era of carbohydrate loading. And that was because a fantastic marathon runner called Dr. Ron Hill, with a PhD in chemistry, who also happened to be a fabulous runner. He won the first Englishman to win Boston. He won the European Championships. He won the Commonwealth Games, and he was just impossible to beat for about 5 or 6 years. And he found a diet that Swedish long-distance cyclists had been using called the Salton diet. That is not salt. I'm not talking about the 1974 Lions anymore. It was named, and it was what you had to do was you had to, with a week to go for a long run, deplete your body of all the glycogen you had in your muscles and in your liver, and then for 3 more days continue to run, eating only meat and fat and salad and lettuce. So basically Tim Noakes' Banting diet. And then at the end of that, you had to then switch and not train anymore for the last 3 days before the race and carbo load. That meant bury your face in donuts, chocolate, alcohol, sugar, and as much as you could until you were completely full. And then the idea was you would go into the race with an overloaded fuel tank. You would go into the race with an overloaded fuel tank. And by the way, it worked. It worked fantastically. For me, it worked fantastically. And so that's what I did. I did the Salton diet every single year, and it never went wrong. Now, I mean, obviously things have become more complex and there are all sorts of different ideas, but there are not a lot of people who are running under 5.5 hours still. I mean, if you look at Edward and Bong Musa last year, they didn't break 5.5 hours, and I'm not sure if they're doing the Salton diet. So maybe they need to get hold of Ron Hill's book and have a look. But I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't try that diet now for all the tea in China, but it worked at the time.
And then you had Wally Hayward, who'd eat a steak before he went running. In fact, let's get a medical man.
Well, no, Wally Hayward would wake up at 3 a.m. and grill his own steak and chips at 3 a.m. and then run. But then remember, Wally was so gifted. Wally was so gifted that he could make horrendous mistakes and still win.
I've had the steak and chips at the end of the evening at 3 o'clock in the morning. We've got Dr. Jeremy.
Yes.
Dr. Jeremy Bolter joining us now. Good evening, Jeremy. Thanks for your time.
Good evening.
I don't know if you've been hearing Bruce Fordyce running through the various fads and diets and nutritional advice that he was getting.
I've just heard the last couple of minutes of it.
Well, it went from salt
I remember
tablets
the
to
days
carbo
when,
loading.
I remember the days when carbo loading was the fashion. There were carbo loading parties 3 days before Comrades all over the country. And as Bruce said, it worked in those days. Science has evolved and changed things, but probably the basic principles apply, that you need the muscle build up beforehand, and you need the energy whilst you're running. And how you get that energy is dependent on the individual very much.
I love the fact that the science keeps evolving, but we certainly don't have the science as it existed when Arthur Newton was winning, where it was the drinking anything was frowned upon. How advanced are we now in understanding the physiology of the runner?
Oh, we're hugely advanced. As you say, back in Arthur's time, it was frowned upon to drink fluid. And when I first became involved with Comrades 42 years ago, the idea was that you should drink somewhere around 1 litre per hour that you're on the road. That went out of the window when we discovered that runners were becoming hyponatremic, or overhydrated as it's called. And it's now changed to drink enough, but drink when you need to. And it's an individual thing. Every runner is different. Depends on their size, their training, their speed, and the weather conditions that apply as well. So one size certainly doesn't fit all.
We apologize for that break in transmission. We're just about to wrap up our broadcast. Jeremy, are you able to hear me? Oh, yes. The question I was asking before we had the break in transmission is whether carbo loading now is a thing of the past. Bruce was saying that when he was doing it, it had worked for him. Have we moved on from the notion of carbo loading?
Yes and no, I think. Look, I'm no expert on the nutrition of running. My field is more the treatment of the collapsed runner. But, you need the carbohydrate as a fuel. And the method of getting it and how much you take just before and on the day varies, I think, depending on the latest scientific decisions or discoveries, as you might put it. The essential still is that you need the protein to build up your muscles and replace those that are damaged whilst you're training, and you need fuel during the race or the run. And how you ensure that you get enough also varies tremendously from one individual to the next.
Okay.
And again, from the top class, the front runners, to the 12-hour runner in the Comrades. It's a completely different approach that is needed, and it's very much an individual approach, but that person has to decide through their training and essentially through trial and error what they need, how much they need, and when they need it. Not to take too much of one thing and another.
And a final question about the advances to the emergency medical tent at the Comrades. Just to give us a sense of what it's like there and the kind of preparation that you put into a Comrades Marathon medical experience.
Well, the change from my first time in 1979 from a 3x3 army mess tent to a 2,500 square meter tent now is indicative of how one of the changes has been in the size of it and the staffing. Way back, the idea, it started because it was found that runners were ending up in hospital in acute renal failure because they'd become dehydrated. And my predecessor, the late Dr. John Godlinton, who started the medical facility, said quite simply, if they had been rehydrated after the race, they wouldn't have ended up in hospital. And that's how the tent came about. Initially, we put a drip up on every patient that came in. Over the years, we've advanced, as it were. We have a little mini laboratory in the tent so we can get essential blood tests done within a matter of 10 or 15 minutes to assess the patient's sodium levels, which is a direct indication of their level of hydration. And so we know who we need to give intravenous fluids to and who we don't. We also have an ICU section now. It's a fully equipped ICU, just as you would get in a normal, well-equipped hospital setting for the really bad cases that we get. But we still are, what I like to say, essentially a very high-class and very well-equipped first aid medical station. And our aim is to rehydrate the runners that need rehydrating, treat runners effectively so they can leave us and go home and not run into trouble later. But those who are in serious trouble, stabilize them and then get them off to hospital where they can be properly treated and be discharged when they're fully recovered.
Well, an important role that you play, Jeremy. Well, thank you very much. As we are wrapping up our broadcast, I do appreciate your time and that look at the important work that you're doing. And we hope that you'll be putting up that huge tent this time next year for Comrades Marathon 2021. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. We'll be there next year.
Thank you very much to Dr. Jeremy Bolter. And also, thanks to Bruce Fordyce. Bruce, you have kept us wonderfully entertained. And I know it does sound like there are a couple of hooligans in the background there that you might want to go and join.
No. I'm socially distanced. I'm all that. It's the next door neighbors. It's the next door. But just one point, everybody said, by the way, to all the Comrades runners, fantastic, well done, brilliant today. The gifted ones like myself and Nick Bester are gifted because we did one wise thing in our lives. We chose our parents with great care.
That's a lovely way to end. Bruce, thank you very much to you.
It's genetic. But thank you, guys. It's been fun. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you so much. To Kieran Walker as well, thank you so much for joining us, Kieran, and sharing your incredible knowledge. It has been great fun.
Well, thank you, David and Mosibodi, for having me. And it's been another honor again, sharing the stage, so to speak, with Bruce. And if I have any parting words, just going back to the diet talk that everyone was talking about, I think everything works differently for different people until you find the right recipe. But in my closing words, I'll just leave a very famous Nick Bester quote, where a lion doesn't eat spaghetti. I'll leave it at that.
I love it. That's a lovely parting shot. Thank you so much to Kieran. And Mosibodi Whitehead, are you going to be running next year?
Well, hopefully, David. Looking forward to next year's race. Training starts tomorrow. And yourself?
No, thank goodness I broke my ankle a couple of years ago and the surgeon said, you're never allowed to run again. I'm happy doing this job instead. Mosibodi, it's been great fun broadcasting with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, David.
And my thanks to the team behind the scenes on this. It was wonderful working with a team of people who were instrumental in bringing the Comrades Marathon to our screens back in the 1980s. From me, David O'Sullivan, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.